if we know that this is a source, which we feel it is, of funding, because we do have a particular issue in that area, and that we fund most of our stormwater through stormwater utility fee that covers the unincorporated county, but does not cover it in the cities, so where we can't use it, but yet we have these outfalls. So this will be, I will consider ARPA as a source for some of these projects, if it's the council's will, which I think I can see that it is. Then we will look, and it may mean a trading or a shaving of some other project, but we would, again, this is a living list. We'll be coming back to you. We have to program it. When we do that, I'll ask Mr. Bartlett to look at his stormwater needs, especially in that Halifax area where we don't have the ability to use our stormwater utility fees. So this would be a great place for that.
I just want to add that I agree with you. I think we need to attack, the Halifax River is part of the Indian River Lagoon. We hear both names. The lagoon is severely impaired. We're losing grass, we're losing fish, we're losing manatees, we're losing industry that survive, make a living off of all that. I think we need to attack the source of pollution, and then we also need to clean it up. And when I look at clean it up, I think we ought to do everything. Councilman Robbins has brought the underdock, mini reefs. We ought to do that. I've talked to the county manager and staff about a larger reef system, and we've talked about funding it through various means. It's not on here yet because I want to bring it to the entire council, have a presentation made to the council, and let the council decide, do we move forward? You're going to love it. It's a really exceptional system. And then another one that is not on the list yet, but I've talked about it with county manager and staff. It has to do with commercial composting. Michael Ulrich is doing a tremendous job in reducing the volume of biosolids we have. We can take that a step further and compost the biosolids, and at the same time reduce what we're putting into our landfills with newspaper, cardboard, all kinds of paper product, with food from schools, prisons, with waste food. And that was received very well because it would put us first. It would in the state with projects like that. It cleans up the problem with biosolids. Right now, we're reducing the size, but it's still going on a land somewhere, and it's toxic. And I don't want it to end up back in our water. So we do have projects. I'd say let's do everything that we can. So I'm hoping as we go through this list, we'll have some alterations where we have money involved for water projects. Some of them might qualify currently. Some of them might not because of what you're telling us.
Yep. Well, any water quality project, we'd have to look at whether we need to use the revenue loss dollars or whether it can be directly eligible. And to be directly eligible, it needs to fit one of those state revolving fund programs that's long been around, that thankfully there are consultants that can tell us whether it's eligible.
It's complicated. There's nothing easy in government.
So just so I kind of summarize, we're going to look at those projects you were mentioning. We mentioned definitely the Halifax water projects, other projects that are coming in that are more in lines of cleaning the existing water with the oyster beds and reef type and other projects. We'll look at those as well, and we can come back, and it may mean we'll try to get a good analysis of where it's eligible to be in. If it's in the more, I'll call it the more competitive revenue loss area, then we'll come back with some recommendations on, where we might want to swap some money, or because you do have some projects on there that if you're remember as well, we had identified alternate funding sources. So one of the criteria when we were looking at the list originally. So we can go back and say, well, this could be funded this other way. It might take a little longer, but as I said, really, there's some opportunity here in the Halifax area that makes it difficult for us to use some of our funding to begin with. So this is a good opportunity to look at that very issue, and we'll handle it that way. And as I said, he's got to program things too. So that's another thing. As he finishes his calculations, then we'll have an idea of what we can do in a particular year. So that'll be important as well. So, and like I say, almost all these things, there's going to be some design or permitting element to it. So a lot of this won't occur to probably in the next calendar year, and that's where a lot of his focus will be, I'm sure.
Brian, did you want the council to go through the list and comment on each one, or anyone that anybody wants to comment on? How can we best help you this morning to know, because this just keeps growing.
At this point, if there's any project that I've added that you didn't think that council talked about, or that maybe one member talked about during the workshop and you want to talk about that project, that's fine.
I think there was
just
some,
looking for direction on.
yeah, and there was some correspondence that came in that I think that you guys need to address.
Yeah.
Okay, Heather Post and then Billy Wheeler.
And so I actually had two things that I wanted to ask about. Definitely would love to see more projects on the Halifax, for sure. Current quality and entry. The other thing is, you know that I had requested for the drug court funding. We had the chief judge come in and say that money wasn't needed. So what I would ask is, let's look at that and what was really the end game of asking for the monies for the specialty courts. So for the Veterans Court, for the DUI court, the drug court, it was to focus on recidivism and having that revolving circle. There was an article, a News Journal article actually that came out yesterday that had local law enforcement officials, that had representatives from the state attorney's office, that had Stuart Marchman, all saying that funding is desperately needed to combat that area. So I would really like to look at that end game and see if we can push some of those monies towards that area. I know that some of the discussion amongst staff, when the suggestion was made for those courts, was actually also to look more at the domestic violence end, because, and it's certainly COVID related for sure. I think we could show that correlation. But so I would ask council if maybe we can push some of that monies into the batter programs, and really, is Angie Pye here? If I could have Angie Pye with the domestic violence, with the Beacon Center, just talk for 1 second.
Council,
Kind of program that I'm talking about.
Did
She
you
can
have-
explain it better than I can.
okay.
So the intent is just really to push this money, thank you, to push this money back out into the community where it's needed and to have the most impact. Hi, Angie.
Hi, thanks for giving me a second. One of the things that we haven't been able to do that would be really great to do here is a perpetrator accountability program that really focuses on managing better behavior, which keeps children out of foster care, helps stabilize the families, and create safety. We have over 2,000 kids in care in this county. Over 250 of them have been in care for 24 months or more. About 25% of the removals in this county are related to domestic violence. There's a huge correlation between that and substance misuse, and unfortunately the trauma of domestic violence seems to kind of fall to the side as we focus a lot on substance misuse, which we need to do, but that is a real symptom of the trauma going on in the family when we're talking about domestic violence. So being able to address the violence in the home, focus on perpetrator accountability and victim safety would really go a long way to protect families and strengthen families and create independence here. The numbers are really high in Volusia County. We did see a decrease in 2020, but we saw a huge decrease in reporting due to the COVID epidemic and the isolation of victims. A lot of the violence that we're seeing is much more severe. The violence that's getting reported is a lot more severe. Homicides have continued to go up in Volusia County. So in order to see the benefit of these programs, we should see a reduction in homicide and be able to see stability with some of these families to be able to keep them safe for longer periods of time. So these are successful projects that have worked throughout the nation. We have one local, within our circuit in St. Johns County. That's been very beneficial to keeping children out of foster care safely with a parent and focus services on the perpetrator of the crime as opposed to dumping the pressure on the victim to manage the relationship.
So my ask to have that impact would be to shift those funds to this program, because this is still a court-related program. This is having that impact and certainly affecting the recidivism in Volusia County for sure, and it's countywide.
Yes, countywide.
Ben Johnson? No? Billy Wheeler?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, this is not a one-time thing?
Absolutely.
It is a one-time only?
Mhm.
This is a one-time only? I mean, how is it going to continue?
Well, there are grant funds that would become available over the next couple of years. With some establishment, we would be in a really good position. Justice for Families has similar projects that they fund. So there is a possibility for sustainability, which I could investigate further. But the sustainability is.
Yeah, that would be important to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we had talked about that as well in the giving the one-time monies. If you think about how many families and how many people in Volusia County that could actually help within that, within whatever time frame it is that they're using it for, so 1 year, 2 year, 3 years across the board, just that impact, a large impact. And
Absolutely. And if I just can add, we see hundreds of families through our child protection program that's only focused on victim safety right now. Beacon Center was given a grant a couple of years ago for a parent attorney. We're the only ones in the state that have that and have ever been able to have this opportunity. It's a program that the state is looking to expand as a result of the success. We've been able to represent families from the moment of the abuse call. So within 24 hours, we're in the home in contact with the victims and able to help them secure legal rights and remedies that protect them, the victim and the children, and hold the perpetrator accountable. So this would be an amazing complement to that program and expand our outreach, and we could certainly develop outcomes that would show the benefit to the families here in Volusia County.
Danny Robbins?
No, I agree with Ms. Post and Ms. Wheeler, but we do have to definitely see what we're actually dealing with before I can commit. I think the only thing I could probably commit right now is, Ms. Post, the veterans, you had something in there about veterans. Whatever we can do for the veteran services, I'm game for immediately, but definitely have to not put the cart in front of the horse on that and see what we're looking at and see where we can help out for sure.
That's twice, Ben. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. You know what? Ryan, I'm going to ask each council person if they have a project on this list they would like to ask you about or discuss. Is that okay? Bart Gertman, would you care to go first? Did you have any projects on this 15-page list you wanted to discuss or question or alter?
I prefer not to.
Not to be first?
I prefer not to be first.
Who wants
So
to? Okay.
I'll hold to the end.
Is there anybody? Billy Wheeler.
Okay, I want to make sure and really make it clear on the veteran homeless shelter.
What page are you on?
I am on page 1-3.
Thank you.
It's the little highlighted one. Their ask was for $1 million. That is through HUM, and they have received a grant also in the amount of $1 million. So this isn't a match. It is just, they got the confirmation that they can use the $1 million for the Veterans Homeless Shelter. That's to purchase, that's to set it up from a property that has been, I don't know, can I have Ann? May I have Ann just speak on that?
Thank you. We received a grant from the VA to relocate our veterans shelter, which now is on Seagrave. And if you know that area of Daytona Beach, it's not a very positive environment for our veterans. We were able to ask for this money because the veterans in our shelter now do not have private bathrooms. They have private rooms. The VA during COVID would like to see our veterans made safer in a safe environment with their own bathrooms. We have a property that is available to us on Derbyshire, and we've had it looked at by the same architect and builder that helped us with Hope Place to make sure that it was feasible before we even applied for the grant. We did apply for the grant. This money is to help us retrofit that property like you did with Hope Place. It is not for operations. The VA pays for the operations. It's called the GPD, the Grant Per Diem. So we do not need money for operations. It's strictly to retrofit the buildings.
I'm not sure you're going to get a lot of opposition on that. Ben Johnson?
I think this is a great project. When you're talking about a grant match, it
Yeah.
falls under the homeless, it falls under taking care of our veterans. It falls under so many of the things that we've really worked on and have a chance to actually make an impact now. So I strongly support that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unless
Thank you.
anybody else has questions, that was one of my top priorities. I also still would like to go back to the Marine Science Center, and this is on page 1-10. And to do this in the entirety is approximately $2,945,000. Am I correct? Are we on that? Again, I find this really, really important. These projects have been on our capital list for quite some time, way before I got on council. And so things certainly haven't gotten better in that period of time. And these are greatly needed. If you walk through the building, you'll realize how badly needed it is. And this would be a great opportunity to get it resolved, taken care of, and we would not have to wait for it to be completed on the capital projects that everybody would be funding. This could be funded out of this. Correct?
That is correct, and as the presentation has been published, you will see that is
Right.
also in the next item.
Yes.
As a discussion point.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one out there. That's really important to me.
George, I'd like to ask George a question on that, just so we all fully understand, because the note is from county managers, continue funding in general fund. Is that money already set aside? Are we still saving for it, or where does that stand?
That is in the budget and the forecast. And that recommendation was the recommendation on July 23rd. That was before We were given direction on the 3% and 5%, so you will see a different recommendation if we were to proceed with the 3% or 5% reductions in the next agenda item.
Thank you. So if we do it this way, that would be a general fund reduction.
Yes, it would.
No, I just would, however we do it, that Volusia Recovery Alliance is such an important thing throughout our community with the overdose. This is such an awareness program of taking the stigma off of addiction. I just can't tell you enough what this program has already done in its short time. And like I said, they're getting a lot of confirmations from the state. So I would sincerely, she wrote us all a letter of their ask, and so I would also like to have that considered. However we do it with the mental health or whatever.
Danny?
Just one more thing. I think we should also, and I'd be willing to adjust some of my projects, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier, to see if we can look at possibly helping out our corrections guys a little bit more, something comparable to EMS, what they're kind of going through, with their sign-on bonus, if we could put some money aside to try to give them a little bit of aid and also retention, as long as we don't overstep our boundaries there with whatever their contract negotiation. I'd be open for that. I don't know if anybody else would be, but they need help as well. So thanks.
Are we already doing that, George? My understanding was we are doing that.
Well, currently, our program right now, the only official one we have right now is in EMS. We are in negotiations right now with the corrections folks. So anything like that requires that kind of negotiation. But the money that is in the plan, there is money that I know drew some criticism, but that's what that money was set aside for, those type of plans. So we're not sure. Again, there's rules on how we could implement this. It has to be attached to some performance or some issue like retention. It can't just be given out. So there's money in there to do that, and we are, like I say, actively negotiating right now.
Thank you.
I do have one request for the chair. If all of council has spoken, I believe Commander Morgan for the Sheriff's Department had a comment on an ARPA project.
Okay. I don't think we're done, but that would be fine to come do it now. Yes, please, come on. Is this a project that's on the list?
Yes.
What, do you know what page it's on?
What's that? 12, I believe, sir? Yeah. 12 at the top. EVOC, of course.
Thank you.
Right, this is the one request of the Sheriff's Department.
Before we get started, I would like to thank County Council for this tentative approved budget. I cannot tell you how hard we have worked with the county manager and with County Finance Ryan to try to do something that rewards our employees as well as recognizes the importance for public safety. And I do want to point out that my compatriot to the south of us in Brevard County, due to going to rollback, is basically being defunded. He's losing 45 full-time deputy positions this up-and-coming budget, and next year he's projecting to lose 100. So, I really appreciate the fact of how our budget was scrutinized to do the best that we could do under these conditions. And I'd like to point out that when you look at the increase for the Sheriff's Office, we asked for a $4.89 million increase to cover the union contracts for deputy sergeants, general wage, and other benefit increases. That also includes that we got hit with a 6% group insurance increase. After we submitted our budget to you folks, FRS hit us with a 9% increase. This change costs cover $1 million to already submitted budget, which would likely require me to hold vacant positions and use other potential operating cutbacks to make sure that I cover that. The combined increase is almost $1 million in operating capital, resulting in a $1.2 million increase in liability and property insurance changes. And there's some misinformation that's being floated out there about Amendment 10 causing this tax increase. I want to point out on the record unequivocally what we have done, and it's backed up by all of our financial documents. In the transition to a constitutional office, the sheriff created a new HR department and a finance department, implemented a new ERP system to serve HR and finances. All of these changes were accomplished with the same number of employees that I had before this started. No new funds were allocated at all, and all the changes were approved by the county council, and we have always been within our budget since the time I've been the sheriff. But again, I can't voice my support to you enough. I know this is an extremely difficult process to go through, and I applaud you and George and his staff for being financially astute as to what we're trying to do here. And with that, I will turn it over to the point man for the new project. If it doesn't pass.
If it doesn't pass, I will take Sergeant Stripes. Will be plentiful. How you doing? Thanks for having me up here. If you would have told me 22 years ago I'd be presenting this idea, I would have been like, no, you're wrong. But here I am. So, of course, most even know we're looking at a new EVOC course. Our old EVOC course was deemed, it's been grandfathered in by FDLE. We probably shouldn't be using it. It's really not within the ranges that they like, but however they grandfathered it in. We don't have a classroom out there. This is the perfect opportunity to look at getting a new classroom facility as FDLE requires, especially having our new academy, which is working out great, by the way. So as we were looking at this, and as I was looking at the agency, started thinking about something that I know you've all thought about, and that's a headquarters for the sheriff's office. And what I would like to kind of pitch out to you is, thanks to ARPA giving us this one-time funding to get us started, is look at putting a headquarters out there instead of just the EVOC classroom. The reason why I say that, and I know we've all seen it, we're watching it in New Orleans, when these law enforcement agencies have major hurricanes, when these communities have major hurricanes, we in the sheriff's office, looking at the sheriff's office, we have no place to go when our deputies get displaced, meaning there's nowhere to go. We have no buildings that are rated high enough if we have a devastating hurricane. So all your deputies are going to be out in the field. We have no place to go. So that's one of the main reasons I'm standing before you today, to maybe look at considering changing the plans of this currently and going towards a headquarters, a sheriff's office true headquarters, category rated for storms. So at this very moment, I do not have the total cost. Everybody can see, of course, public record, they have $15 million set aside of the ARPA money. That's a great start. And I'm sure we could come in, I'm not going to guarantee it, somewhere maybe $5 or $10 million more. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, otherwise I would have been doing this for 30-something years. But anyway, that's something I'd like you to consider. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
So you're talking about adding, you're not changing the road course.
No,
You're adding the headquarters to it.
Yes.
So it'd be 15 million plus another 5 or 10 million.
Just so you know, sir, the 15 million included a building with large classrooms, a standalone building for the track. This will be this one big law enforcement facility, one big grounds, but everything's still included in it.
Ben Johnson.
Their driving course is an absolute necessity, really, because that driving course goes all the way back into the 80s. It was state-of-the-art at the time. It's antiquated, wouldn't pass today's standards. No restroom facilities, that needs to be looked at. You do have to look at the future of a new building, there's no doubt about that. But we need to have a little better financial plan. And one thing you have to remember, and you have some of the money sitting there in that property we bought up on North 17. You need to sit down and start crunching the numbers. How much can we get out of that property? Where else can we go? It's kind of you need it. But I can't see us doing it today. We're putting a big investment in you today. But come back with the battle plan as to how to do it correctly. One other thing you have to research, and I don't know if it's still there or not, used to be that the sheriff had to be located in the county seat, from what I recall. And that's something that needs to be researched there. Also, Although I will agree that the better place for it to be would be out on Indian Lake Road, which is more centered in the county. But just to make sure that before you go too far, just to check that back again, and then start sitting down and start putting pencil to paper, and how can we do it in the best possible manner, and where can you start, putting the money together to do this in the next few years, not this year.
I absolutely agree with you, sir. And this kind of fell into the lap when we were looking at the whole thing, the whole situation. We do have they're working on some plans now to actually look at that. On top of that, we'd be looking at relocating, of course, District 3 and saving some taxpayers' cost of the rentals of the buildings we're renting currently up in the Ormond Beach area. So yes, we're going to take everything in consideration. I don't expect this to be launched off the ground this year. It's something I like to look at, get some plans put together, get some generalized pricing, and bring it back and let everybody look at and go from there.
Okay, and then I think we had Heather and then Danny. Oh, and
I was just going to add,
go ahead.
just to make sure there's clarification. I don't think they're asking for any more right now. They're just saying that they're 15 million. They would like to add the term headquarters into their request. And then I think, as was stated, we would work with the Sheriff's Department on a financial plan on how to achieve that. And I think Mr. Johnson brought up there are assets that we could.
If I could add one more thing, and I thought about what you said, sir, about the sheriff's stand and the county. I don't think we should. I think we should clear out the fourth floor. We have about 50 employees up there now. But my opinion is I think we should leave records here. Everybody in the county knows records is here. And I think that the records is big enough to accommodate the sheriff to have a sheriff office actually for the sheriff in that part of the building, and opening up the rest of the floor for the rest of the county.
I'll go back to the road course just for a second. If we shut that down, that becomes very valuable property that could be sold to lessen the blow of $15 million. Am I correct?
Oh, correct. Remember, the other discussion that we had originally is that in the larger scheme, we're looking at moving the road and bridge facility a little farther to the west on that massive property that's out there. And then the eastern side of that would be available for industrial use, we would hope, along the railroad track. So the idea eventually is getting some more value out of that track that's out there as well. So,
Danny Robbins?
Sheriff, thank you for coming. Do you remember how much, just as a gauge to give everybody else a little bit of an idea, do you remember how much Valor costs? Would that be kind of comparable?
Valor was a four-story building when we started, and it was probably around 28 million.
Okay.
And then we, through the construction cost overruns, we took the fourth floor off. One of the things that we're looking at is the footprint of the property and evidence building. I mean, we built that for not quite $12 million. We built that for. So there's a lot of play there to see which way we're going to go. And again, we're working with George and the engineers to see what's the best way. We don't expect you to wave a magic wand and say, hey, you're going to start breaking ground on October 1. It's just strategically planning out how do we do this with the least amount of impact to the residents.
Okay.
Ben, did you have something else? I see wheels turning. Go ahead, Heather Post.
A number of my questions have been answered now, which is good. So I just wanted to clarify that 15 million is not only being used for the emergency vehicle course, but also for a jump start for the headquarters.
I'm not a builder.
Right.
I think there's a way to
But
do
that's the
this
intent.
entire thing for $15 million. I mean, in our conversations with George and the engineers, there's a way to do this with that money and not having to touch any other taxes. And again, I'm not a builder, but I can tell you, with getting our own academy, the people that are coming in from around the country, these young kids, facilities means a lot, pay means a lot, but there's one thing that none of us can control in here, and it's the 30-year pension. That's where we see people spin on their heels and say, whoa, 30 years, So, FSA is working hard with our legislators to try to carve out an exception for public safety to knock that back down up to 25, to make us more appealing around the country. Because people come here, and when we talk to them, and I listen on the interviews, I mean, Volusia County sits in the middle of everything. You're an hour from Jacksonville, you're an hour from Orlando, we got a great quality of life, we have affordable housing here, and people love it. But then they say, 30 years. That's kind of hard to, and I think the same thing on the correction side of the house is the same thing, that 30-year number, there comes a point in time when you just can't, physically you can't do it.
Yeah, I was very excited to see Representative Leak in the area and asking all the questions, and so very, very excited to even think that in the next few years, the FRS, the Florida State Retirement System, might be revamped a little bit.
And
There's
just
the
to drop
possibility.
back real quick on your request with Amy, we have been meeting with DCF. There is a ton of money and a ton of projects out there that we don't think Volusia County is being properly served because of that. They put together a task force to study that. And right now, the first step to be implemented is we now have a coordinator. So when I get an email from a family that their kid's out of control or it's a domestic violence issue, we can funnel that person to that coordinator who now can work them through the portal of all of the social agency aspects that are available. There's a lot of money there. Is it being utilized properly in Volusia County? The answer to that question is no.
And so as a side note, then I think council, part of the ask for the domestic violence issues was in putting that monies in there and allowing that process to build and to be able to serve more people. It allows for the opportunities for more access to that money and more grants and various things when you can show that that's successful too. So I appreciate you bringing that up as well, Sheriff. But certainly in favor of the 15.
Danny Robbins?
Just lastly, real quick, is there anything that we can, Sheriff, get started on just with the price of, with the inflation going up and then the price of cost, material and labor, it's skyrocketing daily. Is there anything that we can do to help?
I think we've already begun to look at the best way to proceed. I mean, I know they told me the price of dirt. I don't know anything. I'm a city kid. To buy dirt, to backfill was one of the things we were looking at.
Well, yeah, we're looking at, fill is a big part of this and a big part of the price. For all the easy land has been used, so we are looking at where this will be a little bit more of a challenge, but it's mainly a dirt challenge. So we'll look at that. We have some thoughts and we'll identify those later on.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your support of all our employees, by the way. I don't think you ever get thanked. You always get yelled at, but thank you for looking out for our employees.
And that's another reason everybody's coming here to work. Your support.
Okay. I think that was you. We were on you, weren't we, Billy? You're done. I just have a couple questions for clarification. If we'd start at page 111, the top line, and George, this is probably going to, well, I don't know if it'll come from you or Ryan. Ryan probably knows. He seems to know everything when it comes to money and numbers. The $2,500,000, does that include, we're self-funded in insurance. We've got a lot of employees in the hospital, and we're just starting to get those bills, correct? Does this include that? Is that looking forward to that, or no?
The breakdown of what we intended for the 2.5 million is not finalized. I had originally done a breakdown of the 1 million, if you recall. The additional 1.5 million, that was part of the consideration, but we also know that with the surge, there's an increased demand for PPE as well. I actually, a couple weeks ago, got a call from Public Protection that they're looking at big, maybe not as big as during the first push, but a rather large PPE need. The 2.5 million was just an increase because we know there's more COVID costs. It might need to be even more than that. And that's, those are directly eligible expenses, so they could come from the 10 million.
10 million's pretty popular, and it's getting chipped away at this one.
Yeah, I think there's probably 12 million worth of 10 million things sitting out there. So, but yeah, that's a great point, Mr. Chair, is that it's been an unknown, and I could just give the example of when we went through the first big surge, we had very few hospitalizations. This time, and actually, when that happened, I think we actually saw a lot of other people not doing other procedures. So there was a little bit of a leveling off. Now we have a lot of people that have gone to the hospital. These hospital stays they're not short. They're weeks sometimes. So we're seeing larger bills come in. I've talked to some of the other city managers. Some of the city managers have seen bills as high as $300,000-$400,000 for a particular patient. So yes, this is an area of concern, and it's an area that's likely going to grow based on what we're seeing out there right now. And so that number will likely be coming back to you to say this is what we think it's going to be.
Mr. Chair?
Heather Post?
I have a question regarding that. So the COVID funds, I know we talked about Representative Leak looking into the FRS system, but then we have Elizabeth Betterhoff, who is working diligently and has just put through the bill for COVID relief to put the onus on the agencies for responders who end up with COVID to say that if you get it, you can assume that it was part of duty. I know we had that question quite a bit from the moment that COVID started within our own realms. And so absolutely agree that we should be covering that, but now that we are looking at possibly being mandatory to cover that, is that going to change? How's that going to affect things, and are we looking at that?
Okay, yes.
If there are additional claims, that would be not in the health insurance fund, but in the other insurance fund, liability and workers' comp and all that. That fund could experience an increase in claims because of that, and if they are related to COVID, this could be a potential source for reimbursement.
So, yes, I mean, we're likely going to see an increase. I've seen already we have in excess of 100 workers' comp claims in this area alone. So.
Well, I know like Jerry Jones was a question, so EMS catches it, but someone in the family gets
Sure.
it beforehand, so is it through EMS or is it through something else? You know, looking for this to actually pass, so should that happen, then it would be mandatory to cover that. And again, in total agreement, but that's a lot more funding certainly coming out.
I think we could look at how much that's been and whether maybe part of the 10 million that's 12 million is now 13 million, and put a line for those type of issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have one. You had one more, Billy? Oh. I just have a question for clarification on page 113 concerning all of the fire stations, Relocate 18, Relocate 23, Remodel 15, and two of those are pretty expensive projects, which would be nice to get out of the fire service fund, but I'm understanding your recommendation is to keep it in the fire service fund. George?
Hold on there. I mean, that's an avenue we can look at, but my recommendation was based on the fact that the fire fund is healthy and can afford these projects. So, you know, when we went through this again, we looked at areas that maybe did not have those opportunities and tried to fund with them. But certainly, that's an area, again, I remind that what we did look at was some of the things like the fire alarming system, which was not fully funded yet and was a very large countywide project. So we were looking at other things that we actually used the COVID money to do these projects. But right now, my recommendation was that we could afford these in the fire fund, and so they could stay there at this time. But I mean, again, that's something that, as you can see, I knew the demand of these things is going to grow for these other areas, so I was a little conservative. And should we certainly have money, I would have no problem looking at reevaluating that. But as I said, the fire chief and this team over there have done a great job, and they're actually in really good financial shape. I know they would like to have more, and I'd like to have it faster, and I want that as well, and I think we got some thoughts in the future on how to do that as well. So, again, things are looking bright over there.
Okay, thank you.
She's waving the flag now.
Yeah, Barb Gertman.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to reiterate the concern around the COVID impact and on mental health. I know we talked about increasing, so I'm certainly in support of that. A lot of the concerns that I brought up during our original discussion were said to be under community services, and the need to, I guess, have resources and funds available to work with some of those programs. And I think that's important. I'm also looking at some of the health impact on the community, where services that were in the community are no longer in the community, and have also been impacted by COVID. And one of those areas is sickle cell. The sickle cell programs have kind of come and gone over time, and I'm talking again with the Department of Health about how to support and initiate a upcoming pilot program for sickle cell in Volusia County. So that's one of the concerns that I want to be able to bring to the table under community services and under COVID impact, because a lot of times they're not getting the care and services needed because of limited access to health care. Lastly, I'm all on board with any of the water projects. Certainly for West Volusia, I know how critical those concerns are for our springs, for our St. John's, and the impact on environment. So I think we're all on a similar page with those concerns.
Heather Post.
So I think I've run through most of the project ideas, but the last project idea I had, and I really want to try and squeeze it into the ARPA funds. Councilman Robbins mentioned corrections, and so we're having the issue with, working to get more people in corrections. We're receiving lots of emails, mandatory overtime. We've got mandatory overtime fire, mandatory overtime in EMS. we've been working for a long time to get 3 to a truck in fire. We've been working for a while to get, to fill the 32 ambulances on a daily basis in EMS. And all of that really boils down to personnel. When I look at the proposed budgets for corrections, EMS, and fire, all of them have proposed hiring of personnel, getting us through to fiscal year 24-25, to get us to that adequate or perfect synopsis, right? So ensuring that we would have 3 on a truck in fire, which is what everybody's working to attain, getting us to fill 32 spots on the road for EMS, which is that would provide adequate response time. But it's all budgeted out in each of those 3 divisions for the next few years. And with us having the ARPA, it would only be a few million for us to actually go ahead and get the personnel now, instead of dragging it out for the 2 to 3 fiscal years, to get us to really where we need to be. We could actually get to where we need to be now in each of those divisions by using a very small amount of the ARPA funds to provide that boost. And with the proposed budgets, it's showing that we have the total expectation in budget to be hiring those people in those coming years. So it wouldn't be one-time monies for long-term stuff. It would be just providing that initial boost now, and still doing what we're being provided that is going to be occurring anyways. So in staffing requests, I'm looking at for the 3 firefighter positions each year for a 4-year period. So 3 firefighter positions for 4 years. Could we fill those positions now? And that would help us to get to the three on a truck. And same with EMS and corrections. It's a broad question, but.
We would need to do further analysis on some of these things. I don't know, George, you have any?
Well, I think we discussed, he's right, we'd have to do more analysis. The thing to remember again is it is occurring. I know it's like a safer grant on steroids, I suppose, where the idea would be that you would hope that your revenue would catch, with growth, would catch it, at the end of the so-called grant. If we go down that road, the one thing everyone has to remember is then you can't be any touching of that fund's growth future years. In fact, a few years ago we went through an exercise to raise the fire fund, I should say, millage, and we went out and we did get that support. So it is an area that people are willing to pay for. So there's no question about that. But that's the way you would have to approach that, was if you were to speed it up, then the idea being you've got to capture it with the growth. And one thing, just to be careful with the fire fund a little bit, is the area it serves, it's unique in that you have a couple of areas, especially on the coastal areas, that from time to time there's talk about annexation and things, and that would vastly change the funding structure of the fire department. In other words, those areas help subsidize the poorer areas or the areas with agricultural areas and things that don't pay the same. So while I think everything is good and solid and everything, but as I mentioned, I always worry about getting a little too far out there because of the fact that that could in fact that could occur. And if that were, that would mean a pretty big change to the structure of the fire department. That's why we've taken a little bit more of a steady growth approach to it, and also trying to get the cities to work with us as much as possible. You know, we don't really have great reciprocal aid agreements and things, especially on the east side. So as we're doing this, we're also trying to work with the cities to make sure that they're helping us in matching some of these areas, maybe covering some areas where we have at a reasonable price, where we have enclaves and things of that nature. So it's an ongoing problem. But that's my caution is I think we'd have to analyze it a little bit better to make sure we would catch it, especially in the fire fund. Now EMS and corrections, of course, EMS is fee and general fund. They are growing. As we put these on, we're analyzing, you know, what they're able to bring in fees, but they are subsidized. So it is taking that kind of that combination. I guess I have to say I got to brag a little bit on Ryan and his team for the PEMT program, where we basically pay the state's share of Medicaid, and that's allowed us to bring in a couple more $1 million a year than what you used to have, and he could talk more about that. I think it's actually on the next meeting. So those are good things that are happening there to help out. And of course, corrections, as I say, we are in negotiations, we are adding, and you know, we hope to see maybe an offset a little bit in overtime as we add those positions on that we are adding even today. So, and we have a full complement, is my understanding, in the academy. So things are working there. There are sign-on bonus, if we were to get that, I think would only enhance bringing that on. So these are, again, it can be done. I just caution about getting your neck stuck out too far because we're there anyway. And one other thing to remember, we can always, as we do this, some of these things we can look 6 months from now and make an adjustment in the budget if we want to speed something up. There's nothing that stops us from doing that later in the year. We can analyze that. It's your budget, and therefore we can adjust it to what you guys want to do.
So if we're not looking to do the full term for both, or for all three, would it be possible then just to simply yes, can you hear me? So the proposed budget that we got for FY 21-22 was 3 additional firefighter positions to provide shift relief to assist with mandated overtime, to provide backfill for leaf usage and reduce overtime. And that, again, that was scheduled out per year through for this year and then 3 additional years. Would it be possible just to get even 1 year ahead in each of the divisions? And that would help. We've all been getting the emails on mandatory overtime and everything else. So maybe even one year ahead in the budgeting for each of the divisions to acquire additional personnel.
Let me look at the effect of that. We haven't looked at it that way. We can certainly look at that. That's a good measured approach, and we'll look at that as well as, and we are really working hard. One of the things that hit everybody hard this year with overtime, you know, was obviously the amount of people we had out. So it's a double-edged sword, like you mentioned a few minutes ago. A lot of people have gotten the COVID, and then therefore that causes a lot of the issues we've had with overtime. Everything it's kind of like we've always maybe just been a little ahead of the wave, but we haven't been able to get extra ground, because just as we were adding things, COVID hit, and then we lost ground because the people were actually out sick. So, but that's a good point. We'll look at a 1 year or more measured look at it.
Thank you.
The one thing that I would add to that is if we look at that and we do the analysis of the long-term effect on those funds, that would, if you include the Marine Science Center, which is part of the 3% and 5% that we're going to discuss here, and you factor in the $10 million as potentially needing to be directly eligible for COVID, you are left at a horse trading situation. So if you fund, if it's feasible in the long-term forecast of those other funds to advance those things, you'd be looking at removing another project in order to use that money on that purpose out of the ARPA fund.
Well, okay. To me, to advance the personnel
Right,
of each
which-
of those three divisions would be,
I just wanted to point it out, that's all.
Yeah,
would be number one priority.
Got it. We understand, and I think the council understands that that you're probably at that situation where once we get done with the analysis, it'll be, one thing or another. That's always tough, but like I say, let's also not get, let's understand we're lucky to have it, and we have it, and we'll use it wisely, and that's part of it, and that's part of why we have a seven-member board or commission here, the council, that is supposed to, work together, and you'll get these good decisions out of that. That's part of it. That's what we should do.
I have a question about the analysis, though. So what's the analysis for? I mean, I understand you're looking long-term.
Just long-term, what I think he's gonna do, and believe me, now it is getting off dangerous, but what Ryan and Aaron will do, we live with that forecast, which is a powerful tool, and they'll look in because it's about in this case, you are adding a recurring ongoing cost. So what does that do in the outer years? Because it's whatever it is this year, it's this year and next year and the year after that they'll analyze the effect of that in their forecast, along with what growth could be doing as well. And like I say, it's easier in an area where you're going to have the growth because you're going to catch up to it. It's not as easy if we're in a situation where we may not have growth in that fund's revenue.
Right.
Then it's going to be a little bit of an issue or problem.
But that's
Specifically,
my question.
It's the fire fund that we need to look at. In the general fund, I can tell you that forward, and you just fund the first 2 years out of the ARPA funds. If you recall, the 5-year forecast for the general fund in the second to the last and the last year, both of them had $9 million deficits. So you're basically taking part of the expenses in that $9 million deficit and saying, we're going to commit to those today. And that's at a flat rate in all years in the forecast. That was the 5-year forecast presentation back in June. So that's the caution that I think George is referring to.
Okay, it's just a little
You have something?
conflicting to me because when I'm provided the staffing request for the outlook for the coming years, I would assume that staff has already done that analysis on we'll if we're proposing that this year we're going to hire these people and we want the approval on that, and then we're looking at next year. I would assume that that's already been looked at, right? So
Those positions are in the forecast, but there's also a $9 million deficit in the forecast with a flat millage rate for the next 3 years.
right, I hear you, but
So you're
if it's being proposed, then
just advancing the deficit causing expenditures.
right, okay, thank you.
So Danny had something to say. I would just want to add that it's going to, what it's going to come down to in the final analysis is that we're going to have to decide what the priorities are. Public safety, clean water, Mr. Robbins.
There also could be a thought in there about, if we're willing to commit to that right now, we also need to probably be willing to commit to raising taxes in the future if we're going to jump ahead of things. But another angle to possibly look at this is, can we, Ryan or county manager, is there a model out there where we can strengthen our part-time program to fill some of these slots? Heather, do you know of anything like that?
I think we actually canceled a number of part-time positions, didn't we, Joe?
But what I'm
That's what you said yesterday?
But what I'm saying is, look up with a successful model, and we may see a cost savings there in the meantime as we play catch up, but we're not paying all these extra fees associated with that and getting us further and further into the red, even at a flat rate.
Ben?
We've caused a lot of hassle this year, people wanting to go to rollback, which creates a major budget issue in the future, and even any kind of going backwards at all. So you start putting funding in the future for 3 years down the road, $9 or $10 million deficit, not even counting the things we have no clue can come up, you're in a lot of trouble. I'm against adding anything that we're not planning, and you start using these funds to put on people now where we got to pay the piper later, and then you're really going to have people upset when you start looking and say, we got one or two choices. Lay off people, which is your biggest group, that's where most of your money is, or totally do away with a lot of good projects we have out there that affects the citizens, such as parks, children's programs, being able to help the rental programs. All of this, you're going to all of a sudden, for today's gain, we're going to cut our own throats in the future, or whoever is sitting here's throat in the future. And we have to remember that no matter what, we have to leave this place thinking about that 5 year. And right now, we're not. He's doing it.
Jeff.
And just as hard as he's doing it, we're fighting it. And we got to be careful there.
Heather Post.
I do want to make a comment on the rollback. So my stance for a long time has actually been that I'm not willing to tax the citizens any further until I see priorities shifting to cover the areas that I feel are of the greatest need. And not seeing a shift towards EMS, fire, corrections, any of those areas where we desperately need it. And until those kinds of things are priority, I'm absolutely not willing to tax the citizens one more dime until those kinds of things are put into priority. Things like water quality, things like that. But certainly public safety number one, and that has not been there. We keep hearing about the staffing, and I keep trying to say, let's use some of the ARPA funds to address this. Let's try to address it in any way possible. And so that's where I stand on taxing the citizens. If we were running smooth and our priorities were totally on track and we were, EMS had adequate response times and I wasn't getting emails from corrections daily from their guys, and I wasn't hearing that our fire departments are responding with 2 people on a truck, then, I might be looking at, okay, absolutely. I'm willing to look at anything to fund those if we're providing the adequate service. So that's where I stand.
Danny Robbins.
I think we do have to remember we are doing, and there's already multiple things in the works there for EMS. We know that corrections is getting adjusted, but too, when it comes to the fire, the union president was in here a meeting or two ago that supported this current budget. That's not saying that he didn't support looking at things in the future, but it comes down to that word budget. These things, once again, we can't, it's like changing your tires before they're wore out. We're putting the cart in front of the horse. It just, we do have to budget for these things. But if we get ahead of ourselves and jump forward, we are going to have, the money doesn't grow on trees. We're going to have to come up with it somewhere. So we have to pick a direction. We can't have our cake and eat it too with one-time money. Thanks.
Ben Johnson.
We seem to forget we're in a pandemic. We're using resources that normally you never have to use. We're not the only people there. Last meeting, we talked about Seminole County, Brevard County. Both of them came out in the paper saying, don't call us if you don't have to because we're to the limit. Last weekend, Lake County added to that also with on TV, that because of the pandemic, they're short of ambulances. You cannot always in government plan for the always worst scenario. You can't afford to do it that way. They're doing a good job. Fire is pretty much up to par. The ambulances are doing pretty good, but right now we can't even fill the positions that we have. Working on that. So to keep adding positions, especially when we get back to somewhat of the norm, you just got to take and remember, we can't, you hope to plan for the worst, but you got to budget as you can and do the best we can. We just can't keep adding, and one day we break the bank and break those people's bank. And that's what's going to happen, because what we do today affects you from now on, because when you add a person, whether it's, no matter how you add it, if you put them on free this year, you got to pay them next year. That's added to the budget. And the year after that, it's going to jump some more. So the more you add, the more it is. We've already heard we're $9 or $10 million in the hole like we're going in, 3 or 4 years. We don't want to use our emergency funds. That people start thinking about that. Well, you better think about Louisiana today and how many of those people have the funds to sit down and start trying to recover. And that's something we've looked at, so we sure don't want to get into them. This pandemic money is going to go away, and we're going to pay the price for that someday from the federal government. We got to be more responsible and realize we got to take and live with what we can. They're constantly between Joe's people, the sheriff's office, and the dispatch are trying to find more and more ways to make it more efficient and keep people out of the ambulances. The key is not, let's just add people, and add ambulances, and add more fire trucks. That was my second time on this, and I think we need to start thinking about Robert's rules about how long we beat this stuff around.
I'm finished.
Okay.
I was finished.
All right. That's why I said ultimately we need to have a discussion on priorities, because for economic development, attracting new businesses, attracting entrepreneurs that will start new businesses, there are certain things that they are looking at. We have a responsibility to keep the county financially sound, but we also have a responsibility to all the people that sit out here that face the same things that we face, with everything's going up, with inflation. Insurance has gone up, gas has gone up, beer's gone up, Glenfiddich has gone up, meat has gone up. Everything that you buy at the store, everything that you do costs more. And so we have to look at rising taxes from the public's point of view and from the point of view of government. It's not easy. That's why it comes down to priorities. And right now in Ormond by the Sea, after 9 o'clock, don't have a heart attack. Public safety is priority one for local government. And in our county, Volusia, water quality is a high priority, unless we want to just stand by and watch the lagoon die, the St. Johns River die. So we're going to have to put all the priorities on the table. We're going to have to make reductions. When I look at the full rollback, there are no cuts. We are gaining $5.2 million even at full rollback. So what we're talking about is a reduction in the rate of increase because of very real factors that I just mentioned. The county faces all those same factors. So we're going to have to reduce the rate of increase in some areas as a compromise to provide a budget that doesn't require our residents to continually have tax increases and doesn't jeopardize our county financial status. It's not easy, but we have to do it. Is there anybody else has a question for Ryan? Pardon me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
The next one's Aaron.
You're not matching today.
That was intentional.
He actually said every council day he's not wearing black suit anymore.
True story.
I just noticed there's a public comment card. You're
Yes.
going to follow the same order that we
Are
did
you're here for item 2? Okay. If you don't mind, we have one public comment, but I do want to thank both of you publicly. What the public doesn't know is within the last 4 weeks, probably everyone on this council has sent you special requests for, let's look at this a different way, let's look at COVID money, and you have produced everything that we asked for. Plus, you're in the midst of getting something else, some other horrendous monster ready that's due today. So, public comment, John Nicholson. I thought that was your resignation.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. I know you're under a lot of pressure because it says there's an election year coming up and you have to hold the line. I've told you before, we went through that in the city of Daytona Beach. Bud Asher was extremely proud that he did rollback for 7 years. He retired and we had a 27% increase in our taxes because it had to be done. Now the voters ask you to raise taxes for Amendment 10. We knew there was going to be a cost to that. They asked for a $15 minimum wage. They knew there was going to be a cost to that. They approved Echo and Volusia Forever. They knew there was going to be a cost to that. They elected Biden. They knew there was going to be a cost to that. They knew there was going to be inflation. He was going to ask for all of these things, like what you're going through today. They knew that we were going to raise taxes. And now they're saying, but we don't want you to raise taxes, we want you to get all of these things for free. Well, there is no free lunch. When you ask for things, you have to pay for it. And I'm asking you to resist the temptation not to explain, because you have to explain to them. You asked for these things, and we did. When we voted, I didn't. But when the majority votes, they get what they ask for, all right? You have to give $3 million a year for 5 years, and down the line, you're going to have to pay the piper. Now, we've been told by staff, and I believe it to be true, because I lived through it, been there, done that there will be a consequence in 2 or 3 years to what you're doing today, all right? In addition to what we already know, we've been told that $12 million will be a recurring fund in 5 years. Remember, $3 million a year for 5 years. And that $15 million will have to be paid every year. Sunrail will have to be paid $8 million every year. You don't get a pass on any of this amount. You have to explain to the public, this is what's coming down to the pike. Now, you can go through the 3% and save them a couple of pennies, or you can go through the 5%. But Jeff, you didn't know when you ran for office that the pandemic was going to hit. You didn't know that all of these things were going to hit. It's nice to save money, but at some point, we've had rollback, 11 years? We've gone through 11 years of no increase. Can any of you say that nobody got a increase in their pay? You've never seen gas or bread or anything else increase? We can't live in a society where nothing ever increases. Taxes have got to at some point increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, no comment. Jeremy Karaginas?
Mr. Chair, Council, good morning. Karaginas, it's getting better over the last 4. My name is Jeremy Karaginas. I'm the president of the Firefighters Association Local 3574. I'd like to thank the members of the council for their continued passion, and it truly shows at every meeting. I can't imagine the decisions you face every day, especially now. I'm here today to comment on the general fund and the allocation of ARPA funds. Fire rescue greatly relies on the services of the general fund. The general fund helps keep our fleet workers and our advanced life support fire trucks running. Our road and bridge department clears the way for our emergency vehicles. Our corrections department ensures our life-saving personal protective equipment is decontaminated. And our facilities department works hard to keep our aging fire stations operating the best they can. A cut to the general fund is a cut to fire rescue. A cut to the general fund would be a huge loss to our community in an already stressed and antiquated fire EMS system. The fire fund suffered a massive blow of $1 million due to last year's rollback. In addition, the fire fund did not receive any of the first round CARES money to assist with this shortfall, and is currently not slotted as of today for any relief with ARPA funds. The $1 million shortfall could have meant 12 firefighters to assist with the increase in service demand, kept at fire stations with ambulances fully staffed, and could have provided a shift relief factor to assist with 1,300 forced shifts my members have worked, and a $2.2 million overtime budget. Our stations with ambulance in the farthest areas in the county from hospitals are routinely stripped of personnel to fill vacancies elsewhere, leaving those at outlying stations with even less hands and resources should an emergency arise. With an exhausted EMS system, overstressed firefighter paramedics, and a labor union ready to work through problems, an allocation of ARPA funds would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We desperately need a shift relief factor, station updates, and relocations that are forecasted for our growth. Your dual certified firefighter paramedics continue to collectively work thousands of forced hours beyond their normal schedule to keep our community safe. We continue to sacrifice our health and time with our loved ones, and we are proud to do so. Many of these forced hours and stations infested with rats is a problem, and our facilities department works tirelessly to resolve it. New and updated fire stations are desperately needed. Although I do not represent other county departments, I do not wish them to suffer a massive blow due to rollback. Like my firefighters, all county employees deserve a properly staffed workforce, safe and clean work areas, the best equipment, and a restoring of work-life balance. With that being said, I support a stabilized general fund and the budget Mr. Reckenwald has proposed. I take comfort in the fact that he and Ms. Conchin truly care about the safety of our citizens, the prosperity of our community, and our county employees.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Tricia Cobb is our final speaker, unless you have more. No more? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I know you're having a busy day, but thank you for taking time to listen to me, and I do appreciate your service. Of the many years I'm Tricia Cobb from New Smyrna Beach. Of the many years I have lived in Volusia County, this is the year you are in the best position to give us tax relief. My head is swirling thinking of $96 million in CARES Act, $107.5 million for ARPA, and now you want us to happily adopt your recommended millage of 5.45. I know you can easily allow us to pay our taxes with the rollback rate of 5.20. Let's look at Echo and Forever. We are now paying double for each. You presented to voters on the ballot as a 1/5 mill. Did voters understand that? Previously, we were billed at a rate of 0.10 mils. 1/5 mil is 0.20. Many voters did not know they would be paying double. The wording on the ballot was remiss. Let's look at another way government seems to be growing. We are paying for the Ponce Inlet Port Authority, Coastal Division, and now ECHO has grown with funding and staffing. Your mission statements convey that these are 3 quality of life benefits to residents and visitors. Please reduce your 3% and 5% options in these overlapping areas. Just a suggestion. Closing beach ramps, since I live in New Smyrna, would give residents who can walk or bike to the beach an opportunity to enjoy it again. You've proposed closing these ramps. I like that. I like that. But is it not silly for you to propose closing ramps when it gives you more money? I could go on and on about these reductions, but I know you can do better for us and manage what we give you better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Van? No, you're back on. She didn't really want that attention. Aaron, thank you.
All right, good morning, Council. Aaron Van Cleek, Management and Budget Director. At the August 3rd Council meeting, Council gave us direction to look at a 3% and a 5% reduction to the recommended budget in the general fund for non-public safety or external expense areas. These areas include community services, growth and resource management, coastal, business services, finance, human resources, parks, recreation and culture, facilities, and information technology. I guess I can get rid of that right now. Also included were subsidies to economic development and Votran. The budget for these areas totaled $75,372,974, or 21.3% of the general fund recommended budget of $352,077,111. A 3% reduction would be the $2,261,189. A 5% reduction would be $3,768,649. Leadership met to discuss the most logical way to approach these reductions. Based on the discussions with Council, we were to look at the reductions that made sense and not look to defer facility maintenance needs. Any reductions presented today would have to be ongoing unless funding is reallocated in future budgets. So if directed by Council to implement the 3% reduction, we are recommending the following reductions. We would reduce economic development new infrastructure incentive funding by $1,593,439. Each year, the general fund transfers money to the Economic Development Fund. Approximately 50% of this transfer is to fund personnel and operating cost, which includes Team Volusia, the Small Business Incubator Program, and the Legislative Program. The remaining 50% is allocated to infrastructure incentive funding to attract new industries or launch new economic programs. To be clear, Council approves all new infrastructure or incentive programs, so the money is not spent by staff without oversight. Well, with this reduction, there would still be $8.2 million available for such programs. The reduction to Parks and Recreation programs of $62,750 represents the elimination of the half marathon event held in conjunction with the Daytona International Speedway. This event no longer fits into the Speedway's plans. The accounting reduction of $30,000 is made possible by the award of the new audit contract that Council adopted at the August 17th Council meeting. When creating the budget months in advance, staff was unsure which agency would be awarded or the total value of the new contract. Now that the contract has been awarded, this amount can be reduced from the budget or appropriated towards reserves if reduction is not the direction. Our other option is to fund the Marine Science Center capital. We've already spoke about that during the last item. The total would be $2.9 million, $2,945,000. The reduction for FY '22 would be $575,000, and then the balance would be in the forecast years. So that's what would allow us to get those reductions annually. The total reductions under the 3% scenario equal $2,261,189, and the new general fund millage rate would be 5.3950. If directed by council to implement the 5% reductions, we are recommending the following reductions. The same reductions that we just talked about in the 3% scenario, with an additional $221,164 reduction to the economic development funding. With this reduction, there would still be $8.1 million available for infrastructure incentives. We are also recommending eliminating new staffing requests for the internal auditor's office. Our internal auditor submitted a request to add a staff auditor, and his request was included in the recommended budget. Currently, there is no support staff in his office, and his request was to add staff in order to increase the number of audit reports released annually. We are also recommending to reduce the general fund funding for land management. In 21-22, staff included an annual transfer of $250,000 into the land management fund to supplement Volusia Forever funding with general funds. The intent of this transfer was to provide some level of funding to manage the lands that were purchased prior to the Volusia Forever program. This reduction would mean that all land management expenditures are paid from Volusia Forever levy, regardless of the funding source used for the purchase. It is important to note that once Forever expires, the general fund will be burdened with the total cost of land management unless that levy is extended again. Another recommendation is to eliminate the conversion to Microsoft Exchange email. In the budget, IT requested funding to begin implementation of a new Microsoft Outlook email system. Eliminating this request would mean the county would continue on our current email system, which is GroupWise. The remaining reductions needed to achieve the 5% scenario were suggested by the following divisions. The Coastal Division reductions include closing 3 beach ramps in the off-season. Williams Ramp and Florida Shores Ramp in Daytona would be closed during the off-season completely. Crawford Ramp in New Smyrna would be reduced to weekends only in the off-season. Reductions are realized from reduced toll taker and ramp grading cost. Coastal is also suggesting reducing the number of times portalets are serviced to the off-season level year-round. During the off-season, the portalets are serviced 4 times a week. Currently, during season, they are serviced daily. So this reduction would make it 4 times a week annual for year-round. They are also suggesting to reduce the beach ramp sweeping. This is done multiple times a year to avoid beach sand from being blown up onto A1A, and so they are recommending reducing that activity. Another reduction option is the beach kiosk found near the restrooms that feature educational information and are currently printed and maintained by coastal staff. This reduction would eliminate such printing. And they are also recommending to unfund a current vacant position responsible for operational contract maintenance in the Coastal Division. Parks and Recreation is recommending to reduce the number of summer field trips for their summer recreation program down from 3 weekly to 2. The savings would come from entry fees and bus costs related to the field trips. An alternative to this reduction could be to increase the summer recreation fee that is currently set at $65 per week. And Parks is also recommending to unfund a currently vacant position responsible for office administration and financial management within the Parks Division, and the duties would be split among current staff. Growth and Resource Management reductions. Growth and Resource Management is recommending to downgrade 2 position classifications. One would be at the Marine Science Center, and the other one would be reducing a full-time environmental specialist to part-time. The full-time to part-time reduction will reduce the division's ability to conduct water quality sampling by increasing the workload on other staff members. We're also recommending to reduce grant match funding for the water quality and sustainability projects. Currently, there is $95,000 allocated to the grant match line. The reduction would leave $57,411. The river cleanup allocation reduction would leave 3,674 budgeted, with an additional funds available through the Florida Inland Navigation District. Another option for the Growth and Resource Management Division would be to raise the entry fees at the Marine Science Center by $1, which could generate an estimated $64,000 in annual revenue. Currently, the rates are $5 for adults, $4 for seniors, and $3 for youth. Community information would, under this scenario, they would unfund a currently vacant position, which will have some impact on the division's ability to fulfill the demand for information services. Total reductions under the 5% scenario equal $3,768,649, and the general fund millage rate would be 5.3583.
I'm sorry, Aaron, say again the one position in community information, what that was for?
It's a senior marketing specialist, a part-time.
Aaron, excuse me, could you go over one more time the growth and resource management reductions, the reduced grant matching funds, and the river cleanup? I want to make sure I understand what you're proposing.
So each year, Growth and Resource Management budgets grant match fundings for water quality and sustainability projects so that that money is available to match other dollars from other entities. So they're recommending to reduce that funding to $57,411 from their $95,000 budget. And then
we could replace that with ARPA funds. Would it qualify?
Under the revenue loss provision, it would qualify.
What you're looking at here is a ongoing reduction recommendation. As Aaron said at the very beginning of this presentation, every one of these would need to have some sort of ongoing effect. The Marine Science Center, the reason that that's viewed as ongoing is because there's so much in the forecast years. Everything else here has an ongoing reduction to it. So if you said that we could fund the reduction in grant match of approximately $40,000 out of ARPA funds, you'd be looking at doing that every year, and obviously there's an end to the ARPA funds. Because in order to make these reductions and to reduce the millage rate, there's going to have to be that's the starting millage rate for next year, and then there's going to be the growth and rollback discussion and everything else. But it's kind of like the baseline. So our new baseline budget for grant match funding would be $57,000. It would be an ongoing number.
What was the amount we gave last year for grants?
Last year, $45,000 was expended in FY20, and to date, there is a $25,000 match being processed. Any year that this is budgeted, any unspent funds in the grant match line are returned to the general fund balance.
Okay, and the river
cleanup is done in conjunction with the Florida Inland Navigation District every year, and so this would reduce the amount that we put towards that program. There would still be funds available from the Florida Inland Navigation District, and we would still put $3,674 into the river cleanup.
What would we put in without a reduction?
$13,674. So there were $10,000 reduction has been suggested.
Did you purposely pick things that you know I like?
I did not purposely pick anything from the divisions. Management met and we tried to find the areas that were the least impactful first, and that's why you saw the first page of the 5% reductions. That was George, Suzanne, Ryan, and I sitting and trying to identify the areas that would have the least impact on the community and on our divisions. And then under the 3% scenario, we didn't have to ask anything from the divisions because we were able to achieve that 3% with the recommendations that we came up with. The 5%, we still had a little bit of a shortfall. And so we went to these divisions and we asked for their reductions. And this is what was submitted from these division directors.
Good answer.
So this is the last slide, and unless you have any questions, what we are looking for today is direction on what to bring back at the September 7th public budget hearing. No reductions to the recommended budget would be a general fund flat millage rate of 545. And again, the 3% reduction would be a $2.3 million reduction with a flat or a general fund partial millage rate rollback of 5.3950. 5% reduction would be $3.8 million with a partial rollback millage rate of 5.3583.
Chair.
Heather Post.
Question on the eliminating the conversion to Microsoft Exchange email. Personally, not sure why that's even on there, because that's really moving us, current technology. That to me seems like a definitive thing that absolutely would need to be done, period. But it's $472,000 to get us to an appropriate email system across the board, but that's one-time monies. So we could use the ARPA funds for that, correct?
There is an ongoing cost to it as well.
Isn't there an ongoing cost to the current email system? I mean, so
This 497,000 was the first year additional cost. There are additional costs in the out years because group-wise is less expensive. That's the truth.
But so how much less are we looking at? I mean, to get us where we need to be for maintenance every year?
Currently, what was submitted, I think the highest out year was 100. However, there's a lot of further analysis that needs to be done. This was just the first year to get us moving forward. IT has been working painfully with our approved vendor SHI to get the cost of actually doing this conversion. And there's several ways you can do the conversion, whether it's going to be palatable to all the users is unknown. There's a lot of exploring that's being done. There are different ways you can do an email conversion. You could go with an on-premises Microsoft Exchange server. You can go with Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 has many different levels of service. In order to make the cost in the out years a little less expensive, they were proposing to do a lower level tier of Microsoft 365, which would actually remove the local clients of Office Suite, and all of those would be only accessible via the cloud. However, we haven't piloted whether that's actually going to be palatable. It's cheaper, and it makes this appear to be a cheaper alternative, and that's what was submitted in the budget to lessen the effect of that. But there is still testing that needs to be done, and I don't think Brian's here, but he knows a lot more about this. He is.
Okay. Well, my suggestion on that would be to whatever we need to do to get us to Microsoft email, which is what everyone else is using, and it actually works as well, consistently, to use ARPA funds for that and not use that as part of the reduction rate. It seems like any annual, we would need to pay annual fees to get us to 2021 in technology across the board anyway, and I think we've learned our lesson in a couple of those areas as well. So I don't look at it as a continuing cost in that way. So that would be my suggestion for that, not using it as part of the reduction, but as part of the ARPA, for sure.
We did not actually propose a reduction of the entire additional amount for economic development incentives, so there are additional recurring transfers in both of these scenarios. If you wanted to fund the Microsoft Exchange project still, that would be an area to look at. Funding it out of ARPA when we don't know what the future year's costs are, we put in an estimate, and we put in an estimate, like I said, at a lower level of Microsoft 365, because we thought that it would be possible. That was 3 months ago. They've been researching further, and they're still not sure whether Office in the cloud is going to work the way that our staff needs it to work. It's just unknown, really. So there could be a recurring cost to that. That's why ARPA was not recommended for this particular project.
You got Barb raising her
Dan?
flag.
Danny and-
Hello.
Okay. Danny, you want to let Barb go first? Go ahead. Barb Gertman.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just gonna say, I asked staff, to consider or bring back the 3% reduction. And, I'm satisfied with what was represented there. So I would support the 3%.
I do just want to circle back, just to make it really clear. If you wanted to do the 3%, oh, that doesn't even affect, doesn't affect Microsoft anyway, never mind.
Never mind. Danny Robbins.
I know we've all been racking our brain on this, and Chair, I'm kind of in the same seat you are. We like all this stuff. But I did some research, and this might sound crazy, but there's cities and counties all across America that are saving up to 75% of their energy just switching. So we don't lose some of these services that we're providing to folks, and we're trying to keep what we have here. As simple as switching to LED lights, and looking at these ticket items that we use every day and reducing those costs long term. I'm reading an article right here by Mark III Construction in the commercial end, where they're saving 75% over the course of many years on electricity. So can we take those savings to keep this or plan ahead and look in that area? Same thing with water. It's another high usage item that we have. So just,
I know historically we had done some green initiatives.
Sure, LED lighting is one that we consistently are doing. Matter of fact, I think there's a very big LED lighting project for the garage over the Ocean Center that's coming up. So yes, we always are looking for those opportunities. Same with water usage. They started as green initiatives, but the real green was saving money. So, we'll continue that. That's an ongoing effort that will definitely continue. And we've had a lot of success. I can tell you, you take like the EOC, and I think the electric bill for that is similar to what our other EOC was, which was a fraction of the size of this one. So we put a lot of effort into money saving and certainly energy saving ideas. So we'll continue that. That'll help.
And I know there's some technology out there about using the gray water, over some of our facilities. You cut down your water consumption or usage by using your soap water, and it goes down into the toilet tank. It's happening everywhere, but these cities and other counties, even in other countries, are experiencing great cost savings, and there's really tons of benefit to it. But I like everything I see here, and the people that are going to be taking the effect are folks. And then not to mention the layoffs that we'll have to do for our beach ramps, especially in this time of economic recovery, putting these people out on the streets, our employees. I'm not for that.
So on the beach ramps, any of the ramp grading and the toll collecting is by contract. So those aren't county employees, but you're right, it would affect the contractor.
Heather Post.
To touch on what you're saying, Danny, actually in the last conference I went to, I sat down and I talked for like an hour and a half with a lady from FP&L, and that was her actual focus, and her job was to go to various municipalities and counties and go through and figure out how to lessen the cost for electric. And it was my understanding she has actually talked with our facilities director on that, and they are working on a couple of things. So I would definitely support continuing that as well. There he is. How are you? We don't
That was the
see
man
you
I was
that
looking
often.
for.
Good afternoon, council members. Yes, so we've been in contact with FP&L. We're currently developing an RFP, so we're going to have to put it out. We'll bring it to council. So this is an energy savings performance contract. So essentially, you will put in these newer efficient technologies. That cost will be financed by a third party. So we'll get updated infrastructure. You have a life cycle payback, and it costs the county nothing. your utility bills remain the same. So you pay for those upgraded infrastructure via the savings you get from the upgraded technologies. So we're working on that right now, so we're hoping to get something out on the street here this year.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Johnson.
All of those are great subjects, and I agree with them. We're kind of getting away from the subject at hand. And I think this is the kind of thing that definitely when you read something like that and see it, or something you see there, that you put it in writing and give it to them, because it's things that we need to look at all year long, is how we cut the budgets all the way through. But we're micromanaging where we're at right now. I don't like the idea of some of the things we lose at 5%. Everybody knows I can't live. I wish I could with the rollback, but we're going to put ourselves in bad financial straits in the future if we do this. I'm going to make a motion that we accept the 3% reduction, making the general fund millage rate at 5.3950.
Second.
Motion by Johnson and who had the first second?
I think Danny, really.
By Danny Robbins. Any discussion before I call for the vote on going to the partial rollback with 3% cuts, 3% reductions? Is that your motion? I don't want to misstate it.
I have a comment. I would just be restating what I stated earlier. That's my comment.
I don't have a screen, so I'm looking at everybody to see if anybody's waving the flag. Okay, then I will call for the vote. Carissa, would you call the roll?
Ms. Wheeler.
Yes.
Ms. Gertman.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson. Ms. Post.
No, on the full, certainly for reductions.
Mr. Robbins.
Yes.
Mr. Brower.
No. So the motion passes at 4-2 with one absent. So this will come before the council and the public at, tell us which meeting.
September 7th, 6 p.m. is the public budget hearing, and we will have these changes on the schedule, on the agenda, and the new recommended millage rate for another tentative vote. That meeting is not the final budget hearing. You'll have another budget hearing that we are recommending to be on the 21st, but you will set that date at the September 7th hearing.
Jeff, I have a question.
Heather Post, don't go away.
So we voted on the 3%, but I'm wondering if we can take any, if council's not looking at the full 5% reduction, if there's any of these that we can still put into effect to make some further reductions, even though it's not at the full 5%. Perhaps that's a management position or decision, but I'd certainly be.
Well, what she's suggesting, and it's actually a very good idea, that we just passed 3%. Are there any of the reductions under 5% that we could also include to get just a little bit more? Like for me, the reducing river cleanup is a non-starter. We need to keep the river clean. But when I look at the beach stuff, I don't want to see anybody lose their position, but my responsibility is to all the taxpayers in Volusia County. And if we have a contractor who will reduce 3 positions, maybe move them somewhere else, then I think that's a reasonable cut.
But, Mr. Chair?
Who wants to reduce porta potty frequent cleaning? Not me.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know how much, we're cleaning them every day or every 4 days. I have no idea what the difference is, if it would be. I know if you go for a week, it's a big difference. But would you have recommended that if it was going to create a public nuisance? Here she comes.
Yeah.
Only if you have to use it, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jessica.
Coastal Director. We currently, in your off-season, which is the day after Labor Day through February 1st, we clean the portalets 4 times a week. We focus them around our busy periods, which are your weekends, and then when we get into the in-season, so 1st February through Labor Day, we clean them daily. This doesn't stop your holiday level service. You will still get the daily cleanings on the weekends. It's just you skip the Tuesdays and the Thursdays, and I think a Monday cleaning. So you can live with it, yes. Do we have a line of people using a portalet? No. You do at Mary McLeod Bethune Beach Park when you have 1,000 people there on Memorial Day weekend, but they're getting cleaned anyways, and we have a porter service. What the impacts may be is your morning walker that chooses to walk the beach every single morning. They walk the same route, and they kind of have a schedule. They always stop at a certain location, and they have they do their morning business, and we always respond. If there's graffiti, if it needs to be maintained, we will come out within 24 hours and we'll maintain it based on a concern. You just don't have the scheduled daily service during the in-season.
I'd like to ask you one other question about eliminating educational printing. I don't know if this is true, but I hear it frequently that those are one of the things that the beach cleanup people are always picking up and cleaning up. Is that a wise investment? Are we getting information out, in your opinion, or are they all ending up blowing up and down the beach?
So I think you're talking, correct me if I'm wrong, are you talking about the brochures we hand out at the toll booths? Like a
yes, and yes.
Those are required according to your habitat conservation plan. We cannot eliminate them. In the next generation of tolls, when we go to the next toll, we're possibly looking at a different way other than in writing, but we're going to have to get approval from the service and from the state as well. What this references on the reduction proposal is every single one of your restrooms, we have an old school park style kiosk where we put lifeguard advertisements. We post for jobs ourselves by like FWC that you can pay for. This is eliminating those and switching more to a grassroots, I get a PDF from a local volunteer group that wants to advertise a beach cleanup, and I put that out instead. So it's using more free educational resources versus spending for more higher quality resources. You just got to remember that if I print it off of a printer at my desk, it's going to fade within a week and a half. So I'm just going to have to print more often because of the sunshine.
Gotcha.
We also use that money to pay for some of the other signs that were mandated by council members in certain areas. So the human trafficking signs, we use that funding for.
Okay.
That's what that item reflects.
Don't go away. Barb's going to have a question, but my last one while I have you here is unfund one position. Is that a current position or an unfilled position?
It's a current position on our roster that is not filled at the moment.
Okay.
We knew this was coming down a couple of months ago, so we held off on it. Mr. Rechtenwald and Ms. Concham made the decision to hold since we were going to the off-season to see how this would flesh out.
Okay. And Barb, did you have a question for Jessica?
I did, or a statement. I know when I came on council, one of my concerns at the beach was the lack of visible education and notice to the public. And I saw that enhanced and improved over the course of that time. So if this has anything to do with that impact, I don't support, changing that. So, because I think the more information, the more education to the public, the better. So.
This is completely separate from the beach safety printing budget, which, I don't know if it's coming from me. This is completely separate from beach safety's printing budget. They're the ones that talk about the risks and the flag colors that you spoke about with us previously. This is strictly for educational information on protected species. We talk about turtles, we talk about lighting, stuff that we can print off internally. It's just not going to be a high quality manatee sign, posted at Bethune Park. We're just going to cut down on that printing level.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I think we've already voted on the 3%. If there's other areas to tweak, let the staff bring them back and let us discuss it on the 7th. I don't think we have to, you know, nickel and dime this at this moment.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. In fact, I was going to ask George because I want to make sure that he and his staff have plenty to work on. Can you,
Not email. Not the
Suzanne,
email.
I'll talk to you because they've got him. Can you take this 5% page and bring us back at that meeting, things that you feel, things that you're comfortable with, things that you think the council could consider?
It would probably be best if we were going to do that, probably for their sake. If you were going to do it, we could walk through some of it right now. Because once we get there, you know,
Okay.
we're going to have, I mean, it can be done, but in the hearing situation, it's just a little bit more difficult to work on the fly. Let's just say that. But he's got the ability to talk about each of those items if you want to see, and then he could have the associated millage reduction.
So I do have.
But that's, again, totally up to what you guys want to do or leave it where it's at.
We already voted,
Yeah, that's
so
what I was
if
gonna
Heather and Jeff have
Yeah. We
have
voted.
areas that, since they didn't support it, let them identify them.
Well, I actually don't mind doing that. So I can't make a motion, but I would like to consider, we voted on 3, I'm happy with that, 3% reduction. I'm glad for that. But I would not mind going through each one of these and having the council decide, yeah, we could do that too. I mean, closing, well, I won't go through each one then, but I can't make a motion to do that. If somebody else wants to go through those and add to it.
I'll move.
I think you can suggest which ones you're concerned with.
Okay. What was your motion, Heather?
I move to do that.
You would move to consider each one?
Just to go
Quick
through
one.
and see if council's interested. I think staff's looking for direction on each one as to whether or not we're good with taking one or the other off. And the 3%, I was absolutely in favor of a reduction for sure, of 3%. And I would be in favor of reducing more. And council agreed that they did not want to do the full 5%, but again, certainly if there's some additional, my suggestion would be these unfilled positions is a good place to start.
Yes, and my feeling is these kinds of reductions that have been offered here do not put us in a financially irresponsible position. It's savings, it's a reduction in the rate of increase. So there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Just for clarity, sorry, Chair. Just for clarity, does that, being that they are unfunded, does that money comes back in the general fund?
So if we unfund those positions, we would just not budget the money for those positions,
Okay.
and we would not fill them the following year.
I would recommend we ask the county manager to come back next time with about the unfunded positions. I'm not against it. I'd like to hear just a little more about it.
He just
And
asked
maybe
us-
we want 1 or 2 or all 3 of them, but that we hear more of what their duties are.
Okay.
Not a great big thing, but just what are their duties? How much effect would it have? Just something short on that. And I'd like to go back to that last screen again.
My only issue,
I
Ben,
would
is
take
that-
and maybe ask Jessica to look at the, what'd you say, during the summer, they do it 5 days a week? 7 days a week?
During the in-season, they service the portlets daily, 7 days a week. What we are proposing is to drop it down to 4 days a week. It would save you approximately just under $51,000 a year, but we would still provide service calls. So let's say you have a portalet that is in complete disrepair and has been trashed or needs service. 24-hour response.
I got no problem with that. Let's look at it and see how it goes. Jeff, I'm reporting you as a committee of one to be the bathroom inspector all summer long. You like the beach.
Not that part of it.
But I think we could look at that. How often do we sweep the beach or the ramps?
So the beach sweeping is usually done after major holidays due to sand that has tracked upland, like that Silver Beach and ISB.
I'd be a little afraid of that because of safety.
Or-
That sand gets up onto the A1A, and you got bicycles, you got cars. I'd be a little afraid of that. I hate to do anything with the Parks and Recreation. You're dealing with children during the summer we're doing something with. I hate to do anything with the water quality and all of that. I think right there that we look at those things right there and just see, not say we want them, we want to get an idea about them.
Right.
Right, and unfunded doesn't mean unnecessary. Unfunded or unfilled just means right now it's not a filled position, and if they had to sacrifice something in these departments, that's what they were willing to do.
Right.
But not that that's the best thing to be done.
Well,
So
that's why I
I'm
say let them
with
bring back a
Ben. I'd like to
recommendation.
hear more about those positions.
Well, I think the department heads did bring back these recommendations, and what I'm trying to avoid, I suggested, I think what you did, Ben, but the county manager gave it back to us, is that would not be the best way to do it, would be to wait.
But we don't, and I agree with that. But, and I don't think we need to get into all of this, but that's just a couple of things that we could get right at the first of that meeting.
Right.
So we could look at it and say, here's what these people do, and here's how much we need them, and we'll also be talking to them at our next one-on-one, and they can pretty much fill us in one at a time there.
Yes.
About what they found, and see, can we do this logically without, like I said, we don't need any more than we have to on that next meeting. I think we're gonna have plenty on our hands anyway. But we got a pretty good idea what we might be able to look at to save a few more dollars.
Okay. We had a motion on the table. Did we get a second? I'm not going to be so mean as to ask you to restate the motion because it was too long ago. But the motion, I believe, Heather, was to look at these 5% reductions and decide if there's any that we can keep. Pardon me? Say that again?
On the things that we instructed right here.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any more hands up. So I'll call for the vote. Who is in favor of the motion? Say aye. 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 Any opposed? So that motion carries, and George is excited.
Yes, sir.
You were complete?
Complete? Yes.
Question on the expectation for the jobs. So they went through each of the positions and said whether they were filled, unfilled, funded, unfunded, what they were, what they did, because I wrote that down. But, so what is the expectation from staff to come back with additional information on those? Do you want a full job description, or what are we asking staff to do other than that?
I would say they're just gonna look at it and tell us what these positions are, how important they are, and how they'll affect us. And I'd say they just tell us at our one-on-ones, and then we can decide when we get at our next meeting.
Again, the coastal position, it was explained that it's not currently filled, and she held off anticipating if she had to cut somewhere, that this is one of the areas she was willing to sacrifice. But she didn't say it was an unneeded position. So I would like to hear the same for the parks position and for the community service. Are they available to speak on it now?
They should be here.
They are, here comes Donna Butler.
Donna Butler, Community Services Director. I think it was at least 9 months ago, we reorganized parks and did not fill this position. This position handled all the finance, the budgeting, and so each of the other activity project managers now handles their own budget. They help put it together, they manage it, so we are fine with the unfunding.
Okay. And what about the senior marketing? Is that that's under you as well, right?
Let's take one at a time. If she says they can do without it, I'll make a motion that we mark this position out.
Second.
That's easy. I agree. We have a motion to unfund one position from Parks and Recreation. Motion by Johnson, second by Post. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Oh, that's under you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Kevin Captain, Community Information Director. I heard Councilwoman Post mention the Senior Marketing Specialist. I would like to just read a statement. Community Information is tasked with providing information services both internally and to all county departments and divisions, as well as externally to the news media and public. Like many areas of county government, the demands on community information for information and videography have increased exponentially in the last few years, particularly since the start of the pandemic, which has continued to change the way we deliver information. Of primary importance is the expansion of our presence on social media and the enhanced use of video production to penetrate different demographics and more effectively tell our story to a multi-generational audience that receives its information from a growing number of non-traditional sources. We're dealing with giving information right now in 5 different generations. Community information also has a growing need to expand marketing efforts for all of the county divisions. Community information also has expanded its role in providing community information services to directly support the county council. In doing all of this, community information, just like most county divisions, has learned to work harder and smarter and do more with less. However, the need, desire, and demand for increasingly more information services will continue to challenge available resources, and as this occurs, this part-time marketing specialist position will become increasingly more necessary in order for the division to complete and continue the necessary expectations and effectively fulfill the growing need for information services.
I'm many times one of those that's asking for more information and for us to be more visible and present in a variety of ways to a diverse and inclusive market. So I'm going to make the motion for us to maintain this position and not cut it.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion to maintain this position, to keep this position. Let me state the motion, then you can speak. By Gertman and seconded by everybody else on to my right. Danny Robbins will take the second and discussion, Ben Johnson.
One of our biggest problems we've had in the county is not being able to get our message out. We're constantly being hammered by social media mainly with a lot of false information. And it's very important. I've said from the time before I came in here, one of the biggest problems is not what we do, it's our failure to notify the public so they have an idea of what we are doing and the correct information. And it's getting more and more social media, less and less newspaper, less and less TV. I don't see how we can really effectively do our job without having the people to let our citizens know what is happening.
Heather Post.
Yeah, so I read this earlier. I thought it said community services. I wasn't sure what it was, but certainly had many discussions with staff on this division and the fact that, you know, this division is not just responsible for social media. You are responsible for our branding, and that has been a, you know, consistent discussion that we're working on the branding of Volusia County. We're working on the branding of county administration, and so this is your division is tremendously important in moving us forward, especially in today's technological world. Everything needs to be out yesterday, and it needs to be out in several different platforms, and again, not just social media, but beyond. So in keeping up, I think it's so important that Volusia County keep up, you know, whether it's with the email system or this division or whatever it is, that we keep up with technology and we keep up with those kinds of things. So this, now that I know what this position specifically is, to me, no brainer. I would absolutely be in favor of this position. Would not want to get rid of it.
Kevin, you know that your department has become one that I use every day. You and I sometimes communicate at midnight on Saturday night. I'll write, this is for Monday, don't answer it now, and you answer it immediately. I know how important you are. I wish there was a way to charge the press for having you and your staff do all the research for them. Then it would be a revenue source instead of a...
I think there is. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think we may want to blame him for raising the budget. We gave him a position.
Yeah.
Priorities.
And here's my however, and it's not so much directed to this position, but my however is, if every department we're talking about in general fund could reduce by one person, that's for a position that's not filled, just or by attrition, I think we solve our problem. We're all compassionate people. Nobody wants to see somebody get laid off or fired. But I think through attrition, and I think there are positions that we could do without. Maybe this isn't one. How many people are on your staff?
We have 12 people in community information. We have 3 production staff and also a contractor that also helps because there's so much that goes into just the videography alone.
Yeah.
Even for this meeting, they're literally the wizards behind the curtain. Our PIOs work 24/7. We're a 24/7 service. And we answer at any time, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, day or night.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is to be responsive. Our job is to provide adequate factual information, and our job is to serve you and the public. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for every single team member on our team and for how hard they work. And there is a work-life balance thing that we have to be concerned about as well too. And that's something that is always in the back of my mind, because I won't call them on the weekend unless I really have to, but I have to sometimes, and sometimes many times. And so that's where, with this position, it is necessary. And as you said, Councilwoman Post, in this day and age, we need to get information out. We need to be responsive because that's the expectation.
Please call the question.
So you're I will. It's one quick question. You're a department of 12.
Yes, sir.
Why'd you put this on here?
This has actually been on here, and it's a funded position, and I have not yet filled it, but I plan to fill it.
We have departments that are much larger than yours, who could probably do the same thing, and then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But I'll call for thank you for, and I'm not. You're my partner so many times.
And just to repeat, we are too. We're here to serve, and I can tell you that every single person who works in community information and the county manager's office, because we're all one team. They all come in with their pairs of hands on the oars, literally, and they will come through. So we're here to continue to serve.
Okay, so I'll call for the vote to keep this position is basically the motion, correct, Ben? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, honorable members of council.
Mr. Chair.
I will make another motion to keep the coastal position.
Okay, we have a motion to keep the one unfunded coastal position. You said there was a second? Second by Danny. George, did you?
I was just going to point out on the comment there, remember, this is for the general fund. There are other, yes, there are a lot of other departments that are larger, but most of them are in funds that this would not have made any effect. So I just want to keep that in mind when we're discussing this. So, these are all areas that were funded by the general fund and not in any way part of public protection. So that's why we're down into these areas here, because that's what is not in the general fund. The other areas are in the not in the general fund. So just understand that.
Yes, yeah, that was, I think that was clear.
Question, Jeff? Question on this one for Jessica?
Okay, Jessica.
Jessica, you said it was the operational contract maintenance worker?
No.
That's what I wrote down, operational contract maintenance.
So the formal position classification is a project coordinator.
Okay.
What this position does, if you remember in 2017, we had a big level of service discussion with the council under which we increased the daily rate and we opened a bunch of additional beach ramps and increased our trash collection services. We also got a new contract with concessions at that time. We had 3 positions, 3 project coordinators that were approved at that discussion associated with the daily increase rate. And these positions, their primary responsibility is to be on the beach in an operational capacity on our weekends and our holidays. Our major days when the beach is gone, we need eyes and ears that can change a toll booth, sit at a ramp, move traffic, call in ramp grades, say the portalet looks trashy, and make sure that your concessionaires are all wearing shirts and name tags. Over time, we had the 3 basically to split the beach up into 3 zones. We had a north zone, which was ISB north, and then we had ISB to the inlet, and then we had the inlet to Bethune Beach. They also do your janitorial inspections, make sure your bathroom janitors are cleaning appropriately. If it is the council's direction to unfund this one position, like always, we pride ourselves on customer service and getting the job done. We will get the job done. We'll just expand the districts, the zones for each of the project coordinators. Where this would put us in a hindrance is if we get down a position due to promotion or separation, then we're stuck with one person that covers a whole zone, and then we take our internal resources and we just kind of flex and cover while we can.
Right. And that would happen really if you were down a position anywhere, right?
We just promoted one. So, I mean, you know, losing some people are actually good stories sometimes because they do get promoted.
Did we have a motion on this one already?
We have a motion and a second to keep this position, and we're now discussing it. And Suzanne, you had...
So I had one more comment.
Go ahead.
So I would just end after my question just saying, certainly while I see the need, it's being done right now, and you're saying it. You feel confident that it still can be done, and we are looking for ways to tighten our belts, and so I think this would be an opportune way to tighten our belt. So, thank you.
Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and at the risk of disagreeing with the very last comment, I'll just say that I am, at George's direction, the person that looks at every vacant position before it's allowed to be filled and advertised. And while Jessica Winterup was correct that we held on this one just in the recent weeks because of the exercise of council on the budget. I will say from my perch, we are seeing some of the highest rates of visitation on our beaches in the history of the greatest beach in the world, in my opinion. And this would not be one I would relish in not filling. One, because we are constantly trying to keep our staff filled at the coastal section. It is hard to fill many of these positions. You just heard a presentation that we're going back out for contract renewal this year, which could bring a variety of additional tasks. And we're continuously looking at adding new businesses on the beach through special event permits that are outside that contract. So while I'm sure Jessica is right and Mrs. Post is right that we'll do our best to maintain at the beach with less, this may be one area where I would suggest it would be imprudent, but that's just my opinion.
Which is also why I made the motion, considering where we are with COVID and outdoor activities, the increase in utilization at our beaches, and just the overall needs for us to have a different presence for our visitors and the users. So what is the cost savings for this position? Or what would it be?
$62,094.
Okay. So for me, I've already made the motion, and if we can decide what's next, I'd appreciate it.
Call the question. I will call the question. It is my habit to give everybody up here a chance to ask questions and discuss it. I think that's what we're here for. I find it, I find this painful that we must find ways to reduce the increase in government spending in government, and we're arguing about one position here, one position there. We're going to have to do better than that, or government is going to be out of control of our of the public. Excuse me, to fund it. So,
Jeff,
but I'll call the question.
I hear you, but I still think what people also don't get is through attrition, we lost hundreds of people over time from the recession that were never recovered. So I think staff has been lean. You're not finding a lot of waste and overstaffing, and I think these people have taken it on the chin for a very long time and done more than what would have been expected, or learned how to be more efficient with what they had. So I think things have grown, we've grown, the needs have grown, and that's why I'm saying I don't think this one position for $60,000 is a make or break for us. And I understand we need to cut where we can, but I just think we have to be prudent about the resources that the public expects as well. When they call us and need us, they want someone to show up.
Yeah, and I don't argue with any of that. You just said we've lost hundreds of people, and life went on, and I don't get a lot of phone calls about I call and nobody shows up. Road and Bridge always shows up, Parks and Recreation shows up, but I'm going to call the vote. But I'll just say again, I respectfully disagree with you. I think that when a director or department head puts this on, that if they didn't think they could survive it, they wouldn't do it. And we have to find ways to reduce the rate of growth of government. We have to think about the public that's paying the taxes, as well as the staff that we see every day, that we respect, that we honor their hard work. There's a balance between both. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor of retaining this position in coastal, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say aye.
Aye.
And you have 2 opposed, Brower and Post. Motion carries 4-2. Are there others?
Yes, under that same one, did we discuss, did we actually make a decision on the ramp sweeping, the educational printing? I mean, I'd be in favor of looking at those as well for downsize. Well, that's what I'm asking. What was the decision then? It's a safety issue with the ramp if we don't sweep it? Well, I'm asking Jessica.
We would not allow it to get to a safety issue. We would just reduce the frequency. So if it does get to a point where the ramp becomes an issue, we will maintain it. I just won't be maintaining it as frequently. Our biggest times when we use this money is after your holidays, but then you also have your unnamed nor'easters, your November, December, January, February full moons. Those are when we're definitely going to do it. That's when you're going to have your biggest safety issue.
Well, if we don't have a problem with safety, then I got no problem with cutting the frequency.
We will not impact safety. You have my word.
All right, if it doesn't impact safety, I've got no problem with cutting frequency.
So I move that we do the sweeping, and then also we discuss the educational printing, just not doing the paid educational printing, and still doing the actual advertising for county jobs or whatever. Just not doing the paid.
Yes,
that's my motion. I guess I combine the motion.
Would you consider adding one more while you're making motions to the top?
As long as it's not the portalet.
No, close 3 beach ramps during off-season.
Yes. I'm in favor of reducing everything on here that you have proposed to reduce, except for the portalets. I don't want to touch those.
I will second that if that's a motion.
I think she was comfortable with the portalets.
Well,
So motion by Post to approve the closing of the 3 beach ramps, reduce beach ramp sweeping, and eliminate educational printing for beach kiosks.
Second.
Seconded by
I do want to clarify that closing the 3 beach ramps during off-season.
off-season.
Yeah.
Off-season.
Second by Johnson.
Right, Gertman.
We'll let you have it this time.
Beat you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're done with coastal. Anything else in Parks and Recreation?
how? Where's Parks and Rec? Where is Tim
He
here?
was back there.
Do we know how much we spend on that? What kind of a reduction we're looking at for
Reducing field trips,
Yeah.
which
I don't
sounds,
like that idea. I don't want to take anything away from the kids, but I'm just wondering, if you tell me it's, $1 million, then we may reduce.
Right. Good afternoon, Tim Bailey, Parks, Recreation, and Culture Director. So when we're looking at the field trips, there's bus costs
Right.
per mile, as well as bus driver costs per hour. That's what we'd be reducing, in addition to the entrance fee.
So less bus. Are we doing less bus now anyway because of COVID?
There are less participants, so yes.
So we're in effect, in this pandemic time, we've reduced that in the pandemic time anyway.
So we reduce revenue by the entrance fee,
Right.
or by the participant fee, which is $65 per week. And then we reduce expenses by lower participation rates.
I see, okay. But you haven't reduced the going out on the buses or anything due to COVID, or?
Well, yeah, we have, instead of having 150 kids per site,
Right.
we've got 40. So during COVID, during this past summer, we had 40 participants per week. So that reduced our operational expenses in the year that we're in, right? Going forward, after we leave COVID, our rates would go up, we would believe they would go up to historical rates of 1,200 kids per summer, right? So what we're talking about here is that if you're doing one less field trip, instead of 3 field trips, we'd be doing 2 field trips. So that incremental difference would be the field trip entrance fee for each participant, as well as the bus driver cost, because you have less field trips, only 2 field trips versus 3, and then less mileage for the bus costs.
So
that's where that savings comes in.
Okay, so I guess my question then would be what portion of the 149,366 is the unfunded position to see what's left? That might be easier.
So you want to know what the reduction for the field trip would be? $57,398 would be that reduction.
And when you say reduce the number, so you would just maybe do
2 field trips.
2 instead of 3.
And 2 would be $57,000 less, or is that totality for all of the field trips? I'm asking if you're reducing. What are we looking at?
It's the amount reduced by, correct?
Yeah. The amount reduced by is $57,398.
By dropping 1 field trip.
Field trip is $57,000. Wow.
Bus cost and entry fees.
Okay, so I was totally not.
Yeah, for the whole summer
kids.
for all the students.
Yeah.
That's a total reduction.
Right, not 1 trip.
Weekly field trips.
Right.
What's the age of your children?
So it's between 5 and 12.
I'll get back to you, I guess.
You know, one of the things that probably aggravates me most is how I get emails from people that moved somewhere else. They come down here. They don't have children anymore, although somebody paid for their children to go to programs and go to school. But now they don't want to take and keep this thing going that's been going on for years. I think it's awfully important that we take care of our children. These field trips, some of them, it's the only way they ever get to have anything that's fun, that's educational, and keeps them off the street. It's pretty good supervision and helps us get by this problem of not being home in a neighborhood and being influenced by the wrong people. I've got a little problem with the fact of our job is to take care of the citizens. This is our youngest citizen, our most important asset that we have, our next generation. So I'm not for taking that out.
So
Mr. Chair, if I could finish.
You could finish, and
literally
then Billy, was that a notice to, and I'll just say again, priorities, the best thing we can do for our kids is to have safe streets and fire and EMS services when they need them. Go ahead, Heather.
Well, you took my thunder. I know how important these field trips are, and especially for our lower income students, which are the ones that attend a lot of our Parks and Rec programs. Is there grant funding that we could get for this kind of stuff, or?
Well, a vast majority of our participants in our summer program, we already work with community assistance to help offset those costs of the $65 per week charge, right? And then we also feed the children at lunch and in the mornings and that kind of thing. And that's also through a grant through community assistance.
Okay. Well, all right. I think in totality, when we're looking at everything across the county, I would leave that. I wouldn't want to nitpick, but certainly something to keep in mind. But for 57,000, but right now I'm gonna still vote to keep it for now. I'm sure maybe you can come up with something else.
I think everybody's, I don't see any more, I'm sorry, Billy.
No, I was just going to make the motion that we do not reduce the number of field trips for the summer recreation program.
Second it.
Okay, the motion is that we do not reduce field trips. Motion by Wheeler, second by Robbins. Do we know how Ben's going to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And
There's speakers back there.
And the man with the most kids is going to vote against it. I think it's reasonable to go from 3 to 2, because I happen to know that this isn't the only program that we have in the county for young people. There's a lot of programs and sports programs and other things. So while I'll be criticized for taking from the kids, I don't. I have a house full of young people, and I think it's very important. So
Mr.
anyway.
Chair, I might have missed a piece of that. Was that to vote to move it from 3 to 2?
Yes.
And what was the outcome?
You voted to
got rid of
not cut it. The outcome was that we'll keep 3 and we won't reduce that.
Won't reduce it, that's what I thought.
Is that what you wanted to vote for? Okay. Okay. Growth and resource management.
Last section.
Downgrading 2 position classifications.
Good afternoon, Ginger Adair, Environmental Management Director. And the reductions in growth and resource management are because environmental management is pretty much the only general fund in GRM. So that's why you see environmental management cuts here. So the 2 position classifications, one is a special projects coordinator at the Marine Science Center. The person that filled that position recently left us for a fabulous position somewhere else. And what we would like to do, that position was originally intended to up the management team there out at the Science Center. What we have found is that we've sort of shuffled duties in a way that I think we have the management really dialed in. What I would like to do is downgrade that to an environmental specialist 1, and that person would report to our educator at the Science Center. And then all of the sort of departments at the Science Center would have a manager and a staff person. The education department, there are currently no county staff members. We do all of that through contract workers. So that change is something that I actually want to do. Yes. So,
He's not twisting your arm.
no, sir.
Okay.
That is something that would benefit the Marine Science Center, and that's a little over $30,000 of savings. The other position is a full-time environmental specialist 1 that's assigned to the water quality program here. It's currently unfilled, but that doesn't mean it's unnecessary. Those are the folks that go out every day on the water and collect the water samples. We do that in partnership with the Water Management District, where we do a lot of the sampling for them, and in exchange, they do all of the water chemistry for us. So of all of the things on my list, that's the thing that I would least want to have cut. But if we cut that to a half-time position, we will make do. That's what we do, right? But those folks are the ones that are out there every day. And having enough people is important, because if someone's out sick, or actually we have one, a member of our military and is on duty a lot, we just don't have any bench there. But a half-time person, we could get the job done.
Excuse me, before you go on, could you use a volunteer?
We do, we can and we do use volunteers. It's a little tricky because they have to be well-trained, and they're hard to sort of keep with us. It's a long day out on the water.
Yeah.
It's not like a few hours here and there. What we do when we have folks out is that we just put it out to all of environmental management, and we pull people from other areas to go out on the boat. And that works until it happens for like a really long period of time, and then those other jobs are sort of falling behind. But we make do right now, but we would prefer to have that position. If we move it to halftime, we can do that.
I move we reduce these based on your recommendations.
Okay, and continue.
The grant match funding, currently in the budget, we budget $95,000 annually, and that's so that we can be really nimble when these grants come in and there's a required match. And all of those are either in favor of our water quality plan that was adopted by council, or projects that are, promote our sustainability action plan that was adopted by council. We have never in any one year spent the entire amount. So a reduction in that amount doesn't necessarily materially impact what we've done so far. We like to have that cushion there so that we can react when these come along. Right now we're in the process of approving a match for growing clams in the Indian River Lagoon and putting those out in the lagoon for water quality. So that money does go to good use. I have never spent the full amount in any given year. And then the river cleanup allocation, I want to make sure you don't think that we picked the things that you like. We aren't proposing any change in the actual river cleanup. It's just that we budget the full amount that it costs every year, but every year we've done it for 20-something years. We get a fined reimbursement. So we don't have to have the full amount in the budget if we assume that fined reimbursement going forward. So we were not cutting any river cleanups. But we actually just don't spend all that money because we get it reimbursed.
Thank you. So Heather, you made a motion. I wanted her to go through all of them in case you wanted to add, amend your motion with other things, and if not, we'll.
Certainly. So I would actually amend my motion to reduce these based on the recommendation, but also to raise the fee $1 at the Marine Science Center, which was suggested before as well. That was an additional $64,000 a year.
Is that okay
I will
with
second
you?
that.
Yes, and in fact, that is something that we had proposed, and then COVID sort of got in the way. We actually had an agenda item ready for you to ask if we could raise the fee by $1, and we just didn't bring it because we were closed for almost, or a little over a year. So we've done the analysis on that and can move forward with that.
Great.
Good work.
Is there something else, Mr.?
Well, Clay Irvin, Director of Growth and Resource Management, just to make sure, right now we are still in somewhat of a reduced service at the Marine Science Center in regards, we are still seeing the public, but we're not doing educational programs and those types of things. Do you want that increase to take place immediately, or do you want us to wait until after we're through the pandemic? Because again, we'll do whatever y'all want to do. I just want to make sure we don't go out there and raise the rates and then all of a sudden hear from folks that, hey, you're not delivering us the full service. So I just want to make sure that we're following through as your directive.
What's the fee right now?
$3, $4, and $5 for.
So 4, 5, and 6.
Yes. I mean, it's a.
No, it's a
My
reasonable
motion
question.
would, I think. My motion would stand.
Okay.
Other thing, and I don't know, we might have to come back with a separate agenda item for the fee increase, but we had also proposed a family pass. We have a lot of folks that come, sort of an annual pass, and so we have done the analysis of what that would cost based on the rate and how many people we thought would take advantage of that, et cetera.
So I just want to make, from a staff perspective, what we're hearing is that bring back to you as soon as we can bring it in front of you an updated fee schedule. We'll at the very least increase all of our current ones by $1, and we'll also look at other methods of expanding that fee schedule to address these concerns.
Okay, let me appeal to the county attorney and county manager. Do you want this as a separate item, the increase in fee, or can we include it here?
We were just discussing that, Mr. Chair, about whether in the past we have brought back a fee schedule. So I'm seeing a nod of the head. If you want to be consistent with that, and then that way we can make sure that we're being uniform and implement it, we can do that. I think council has the authority to increase it. I think what you're hearing is that the staff can bring back a rate schedule so you can see it in practice.
What's your feeling? Do you want to amend your motion?
I would say the motion stands then.
Okay, the motion stands to make all these reductions and increase, raise the fee by $1.
Right.
Second.
Second. Motion by Post, second by Gertman. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay.
That's it.
We did that one.
We also need to go back a slide. There were
Okay.
some other things that were in the 5%.
Aaron,
He's wanting to continue to reduce.
what are you going to talk about next?
I think we just want clarification on 2 items that we didn't talk about.
I believe that these were the additional things that were in the 5% that weren't on that page. I believe that Councilmember Post talked about exchange, and that there's no desire for that, but the other items on this page have yet to be discussed.
Okay. Same reductions at 3% with an additional 221,164 reduction in economic development infrastructure program. Why don't we take each one of these one at a time, and is there a motion on keeping that reduction?
I'd like to hear about it, if we can.
So as far as with this particular item, the additional 221,164 would leave how much left, Aaron?
The additional reduction would still leave $379,627 towards new incentive funding, and you would be left with $8.1 million in 21-22 available for appropriation.
If you don't touch it, what do they get?
If you don't touch it at all, or I'm sorry, the 3% was already approved, so that's a $1.6 million reduction. They'd be left with $600,791 towards new incentive infrastructure, and they would have $8.2 million available for appropriation in 21-22.
Go ahead, Billy.
Well, I'm just okay with just the 3%. This would take it to the 5%. We've already voted on the 3%, and I'm sticking with that one.
I would, Greta has become one of my favorite people to talk to because her department is one of my favorite departments. I think they do tremendous work. Greta, however, this is my most unfavorite part of economic development. These are the funds, if I understand it correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that these are funds that many of our taxpayers despise. It's where we're giving money as an incentive to another company to come into Volusia County to do business. And I would much rather see those funds used for some tax relief for our local citizens, or for other programs in economic development. But so I'm good with that reduction. Sorry. Did you want to speak? Or Cyrus, either one of you?
The one thing I want to point out as she comes up is that we don't give money to those companies. The money, that's what it said for economic development infrastructure funding. The idea typically is it goes to pay for something like a turn lane or extension of a water line or something that allows the project to occur. Typically, providing some infrastructure that probably should have been there in the first place. Companies that come in don't expect to have to pay for that. They expect most of the infrastructure to be there. So that's what this money is mostly used for. And in any kind of recent time that I've been associated with, it's been to build some sort of infrastructure around it that was needed. Anything else you want to add?
Wait, 1 second before you start. Did you two have questions before Greta?
I do.
Okay. Heather?
I just have I have a question about the amount, because I want to make sure. With the 5% reduction, we would still have 8.2 million?
In reserve.
In reserve for the incentives. So
8.1.
8.1 with the 5%, and where did 8.2 come in?
The 8.2 million is under the 3% reduction that they'll still have available. Under the 5% reduction, they'd have 8.1 available.
Gotcha. Okay, so 8.1 million for incentives still with the 5% reduction.
So I just wanted to clarify, as Mr. Rechtenwald had said, these dollars are not really just given to businesses as you know, as incentives. They're also used for infrastructure, as he said, but then we also use them, we can use them for programs, provided we have council approval. It's not limited to incentives directly to businesses.
Do we have any obligations, or is that in a separate item for the, I know the program no longer exists, but.
The QTI?
Yeah, the QTI. Is that money out of here or out of somewhere else?
We already take that money into account.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure.
We do have outstanding obligations, though, yes.
Right, thank you.
And so I just want to clarify the amount. So, so 8.1 million, but we've already reduced it by the 3%. So this reducing it further would reduce it an additional $221,164. In terms of 8.1 million, you know you're a division that I back and love, but I'm also looking for ways to try and reduce in various areas. And 221,000, it's although it's a large number, it's a small number, but I would, give me your thoughts on it, Helga, other than just give it to me.
So we had, during the original conversation, suggested
Yeah.
the 3% because we felt it was an acceptable reduction. And granted, the dollars are there. They're not being used immediately, but they are there for the event that we need to provide for infrastructure. For example, the $4 million grant that we just got from the EDA, we got that because we were able to take $1 million out of those dollars and apply it to leverage the funds, right? They had a match requirement. So this money is also used for those kinds of things. I'm going to hate to see any amount reduced, obviously, because we like to keep the monies available. But, you know, it is what it is.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say in this area then. So we've already reduced it by 1.5 million. And so 221,000, really a drop in the bucket. I'm going to say I'm willing to hold it at the 3%, only and specifically because we've had many discussions, and I know that you are really looking at out-of-the-box thinking right now, and you were really looking to move us in another direction. So even though 221,000 is not a whole lot in context, I think you could probably do a lot with it, and I'm hopeful that you can. So I would be in favor of leaving the Economic Development Division at the 3%.
I just want to point out that we've done this three or four times here, that this is not a lot of money. 60,000 here, 80,000 there, 221,000 here. Pretty soon it starts to add up. And again, I think Ryan did the best job I've ever seen anybody do, proving that growth isn't paying for itself, and that we've got to move to a position that when we're attracting a company, that if there's $3 million required for infrastructure to make that happen, that they need to pay for it and not all of our taxpayers pay for it. I think $8.1 million still in that fund is sufficient. And but with Ben Johnson,
when I ran for office, the thing that got the most attention was jobs. Jobs for our children, that we're educating people in this county, our children, and people that send their children to our county to get educated, go somewhere else because of lack of jobs. Incentives is something like it or don't like it, you have to do it in order to be in the ball game. And it's to bring in good high. Volusia County's taxes are backwards. It's more on residential. We have to get it more on business and industry. And you do that with incentives. You do that with being able to put in the infrastructure, being able to take and have something come here. If they got a choice, they're going to Lake County, Flagler County, Leon County, and they're going to put the infrastructure in versus Volusia County. It's short-term gain for a long-term loss. That's what we're looking at, is how do we take and change our tax base around? And sometimes you have to put a little bit in it in order to get there. So I'm comfortable with the 3% not cutting anymore.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Ben, because I've studied this real close for a number of years here. And what you just said is the common belief that if we don't do this, if we don't use incentives because everybody else does it, nobody's going to come here. But the fact is that that's not what happens. And many companies will use that, and then they come back, well, I got some, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask for more incentives down the road. What really works is spreading money around in our county that improves the roads, the sidewalks, the safety, the water, for every business. And that makes us, that's what makes us attractive. And in fact, I'm requesting not this council, but another board here, that we have that presentation by traffic engineer group that have proven that incentives hurt the tax base and there's better ways to spend that money. But so I really would just like that on record, because I keep hearing that we have to do it, everybody else does it.
Well, I'm making a motion to leave the 3% as it is.
Okay.
I have another question for him.
Okay.
Helga, so it's labeled as economic development infrastructure funding, and we keep talking about the incentives, but you can use it for things other than incentives, correct? Which was my hope and my focus on pushing you towards that end.
Yes,
So
as long as it has council approval, it can be used for other programs as well.
okay, so again, that's what I'm looking at. You using the 221 for is not for necessarily incentives money, but more.
Any incentives would also need to come back before the council.
Right, okay, but more out of the box thinking for, specifically for businesses that already exist, because I know that we had talked about that as well. So that would be my hope for that money, is to invest in our community here to move us forward.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to not cut this, and did you get the motion in a second? Okay.
Motion by Johnson, seconded by Wheeler.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. All in favor of not making this reduction, say aye. Any opposed, say aye. And I'll be the lone vote against it again. But the motion carries 5-1. Okay, 3 more. Eliminate new internal auditor staff request.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Edwards, Internal Auditor. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support that the County Manager has given me in approving this recommendation, because this is different than the others. This is a brand new position, so I appreciate the support of management and of council of considering this. So when I was interviewing and started this department, the suggestion by council members at the time was to potentially include a coordinator in this position. I don't think a coordinator, office coordinator, would be the best approach for this. I think having another staff auditor, I'm thinking like an entry level or some recent college graduate or even someone with experience would be great. But this is to help produce more reports and more audits throughout the year. There's been a lot of discussion about the different grants, the ARPA money, the COVID money. That would allow me to tackle a lot of those as well. So I also did comparisons to other counties, our size in Florida, population-wise, also budget-wise. Some of those are 2, 3 FTEs. Some of them are up to 8 or 10. So this is trying to address those issues and, again, produce more audit results for you guys.
Questions? If no questions, is there a motion to keep this reduction or to eliminate it?
I'll make that motion. Keep it.
To keep the $82,449 reduction, or to keep the staff request position?
To keep that position.
Okay, the motion is to retain this position and not cut it, not have the savings of $82,449, second by Wheeler. Any other questions? Is that a question? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say aye. And
Aye.
Three opposed, and 3 for. The motion still carries with a tie.
Now, the motion would fail. The motion fails.
We had 3 opposed and 3 for.
Because it was a tie vote, so.
I thought
Yeah.
oh, okay.
The motion that you made stands and passed on a tie.
No, it fails on a tie.
The last time, it passed.
That's what I thought. I thought last time.
Okay, so the motion fails.
Mr. Brower, can you clarify who's against? Ms. Gertman is against?
The 3 that
Yes.
voted against it was Gertman, Brower, and Post. Oh, need some of that high-priced scotch right now. Okay, reduce general fund funding for land management. Donna, are you doing this one?
So the 5-year forecast projects $250,000 from the general fund be contributed into the land management fund. Most of you are familiar that there is a reserve. Current reserves are at $12.7 million. Those reserves are assumed to be used for the maintaining of our forever properties in perpetuity. If this is reduced, then the 15% that we're planning to bring to you next time will only take us so far. As we continue to increase our lands in our forever program, it will take more staff. So we're at your pleasure.
Say that again. If we do this, you're gonna need more staff?
I'm letting you know that the budget's going to increase. We're contemplating using 15%. It'll come to you at the next council meeting. 15% of the land the forever fund that comes in each year, 15% will be set aside for the maintaining of the lands. But if we have $250,000 taken out, we're going to need to use our reserves to fund the operation of the maintenance of our properties.
And as the tax comes in, for this new year, just got approved, are we not taking more money out for land management for each project?
We are bringing to you a resolution that will provide 15% to be taken from the top of it for the ongoing maintenance costs. Am I correct?
So what we have here, like I say, is this is historically, you've been funding land management, that you've been funding this with $250,000 for the land that's not, was not bought by Volusia Forever previously. So what they're asking, they asked here was to take away that funding from the general fund for land management. So to make that up, it would have to either be less management work done, or the management would have to occur out of the new funds that are coming in from Volusia Forever.
Isn't that a requirement for any project approved by Volusia Forever, that there has to be a set aside to manage that forever?
There is a set aside for land management, and the current set aside, because it's at the next council meeting, is when we're discussing
Right.
the 15%. The current set aside is a 10%
10.
set aside. However, what this item is saying is that historically, the general fund has always paid for a piece of land management. Do you want to keep doing that? Or do you want to have all of land management paid for out of forever? That's what this boils down to.
Ryan, will the 15% take care of what we need once we put that in?
The 15% right now pays for land management, but the question will become, based off of what projects get approved over the next 20 years, what will the land management cost be then, and will 15% be enough then?
That can be changed though, can it not?
It could be in the future. You could change your land management set aside.
Another council could look at it and say it's costing us a little more, we can go to 20% to take care of what we have.
They could do that.
We also, we're looking, of course, using conservation easements and other tools that may, we may add a lot of land to the portfolio, but maybe not all of it would need intensive land management, because if it's, say with this agricultural program, essentially they would be maintaining that land. We would have the easement over it to keep it in conservation. So it'd be less work. The other thing we've done is partnered with the other agencies, like St. John's Water Management District. So not every piece of land we buy will, or obtain through that conservation easement issue projects, they may not require the same amount of management work. So
I will make the motion.
Second.
What's the motion?
To reduce by the 250,000.
Okay. Motion by Gertman, second by Johnson. I don't see any other hands up. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chair.
That one passes, right? Yes, Michael Dyer.
Yes, Mr. Osowski and I were discussing and going back to, could I revisit for a second the internal auditor staff request?
Okay.
So council by majority vote voted to accept the 3% cost reductions and is revisiting each of the examples in the 5% list.
Correct.
The motion to keep the position failed, so it means it doesn't carry, but the original direction of council in the prior vote to accept the 3% reductions still carries. So the effect of where we are now is that there is not council direction to eliminate the internal auditor staff request position, because you had a tie vote, so it didn't pass. So we're back to the 3%. Just want to bring that up in case, so if you did nothing now, the effect would be that staff request for that position would stand.
Whoa.
Ben Johnson. Be careful what you say, the lurching.
When I talk, you listen now, otherwise. We might be taking a little bit on that, reducing the auditor. The reason we got the auditor was to look and make sure we were spending our money wisely, and to go through and to make sure that we didn't have people stealing, which can happen. How much money was that?
82,000. The request for the additional internal auditor staff position was 82,000.
I'm not sure that we might not be making a mistake, because that's somebody who is overlooking. I mean, they get into the kiosk of Votran. They get into looking at all the stuff at the county barn. I mean, down the cans of wax, which I knew years ago people used to go in there and get a can of wax for their own car, all this kind of stuff. See, I'm not too sure we might not be looking at something here that auditing is designed to make sure we're spending our money wisely and to find better ways to spend our money, or ways to save our money, or looking for theft. And this is we have a lot of people, a lot of things, and Jonathan's done a good job. I'm not too sure that we're not making a mistake, and I can't call for it because I was on the losing side. One of y'all, if you want to, who may have changed their mind, to think about the idea that maybe we ought to look at this again.
Michael Dyer, I think you were on the winning side, as it turns out.
Yeah, and so where you are now is that staff position request for the internal auditor would proceed. Council has not voted by a majority vote to remove it or defund it.
It was confusing.
Yeah, it is confusing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I voted against it, and it's not that I don't think Jonathan's doing a good job. I think it's because he's doing a good job.
Yes.
And he was able to audit a lot of the key areas. And I don't, if I have to sacrifice something, that additional position this year, this coming year, would be that. And we can look at it again the following year, but he's been able to provide the reports and the detail. And I think he's found certainly some efficiencies, but you know, I'm satisfied with what he's been able to provide.
Okay, thank you. All right. Last one.
So now can I make a motion for the Microsoft Exchange email for us to not remove that and to go forward with that so we can stay current on our Exchange email?
You just
Because
made,
I really don't like group-wise.
you just made the motion to,
Second.
not to eliminate the conversion. Let's make sure we're all voting on what we think we're voting on this time.
Didn't we already do that, though? We already, you said that we were gonna now look at everything except for that, because we had already discussed that?
I said
You
I
need a
thought it was
motion?
clear, but I think a vote
Okay,
is better.
all right, good.
And you're gonna look at ARPA funding for that.
Yes. Are you clear? So maybe not clear.
I wrote it down that you said that.
Yes.
I think the motion is to leave it alone so it would be funded in the general fund.
Right. But earlier you said you would still look to see if we could do that with ARPA money, depending on the changes of. But the motion on the floor is to not eliminate the conversion to Microsoft. Is there a motion by Gertman? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Post. All in.
I'd like to ask.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Ben Johnson.
Ryan, could that be split funding?
With who?
Part of it ARCA, part of it general, because what we're concerned about is the upkeep from then on. That's our biggest concern, you know, whether we go buy it with ARCA money. If we buy it with ARCA money, the problem is next year we're in a hole because now we have to fund that, you know, the upkeep. It's not in the budget. So next year you have to worry about something. Is there a way that you can kind of split it where you buy maybe the software or whatnot, but leave a funding part in it for the general upkeep over the years? Would that be feasible?
It could be done. However, I would caution with IT, there's always the next implementation that needs to be done. And this is just this year's, what's our implementation cost for a new thing? So there's always that next year's
Well,
new
and I agree
project.
with that. I know we're dealing with the sheriff's office when we went in these big projects that went on and on and on. That's just a question I had. I'll leave it as is.
Any other questions? Have a motion to not eliminate conversion. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. That's a good thing. That means we're going to adjourn here in a minute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chair, if you're losing your voice, we can start hollering at each other and nobody will know it.
I just want to grow up to sound like you, Ben. Yes, sir.
Just to give you an update with the votes that you made, the reduction is 3.8%, $2,826,992. New general fund partial rollback millage rate of 5.3812.
Motion to accept by Johnson, second by Wheeler. Any discussion, any questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion to reduce the rate of growth by 3.8%, giving us an effective millage rate of 5.3812, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Same thing.
Yeah, two opposed. Appreciate the effort. We're making progress. I'm going to stand with full rollback. But so, you good? With that, County Manager, County Attorney, Susan, do you have anything else you need from us?
No, we'll see you at the next meeting.
And the next meeting is next Tuesday, which is August or October, September the, who's on second?
Second.
September the 7th.
7th, yes.
And can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Wheeler, second by Robbins. All in favor, say aye.